What's up, guys? It's been a while since we've been able to do a live like this. I hope the connection's good and everything like that. Hoping for some people to come on and give us some questions there, but we can talk about some of these things that were in the story questions today, and we answered them in the story, but 15 seconds is really, it's very limited, right? So if anybody who's joining, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in here and we will answer them. I would prefer to focus on these questions than the ones that are already here. But the first question here, tinnitus is said to be permanent damage. How can I stop the ringing? Well, a lot of things are said to be permanent, mainly I think just because medical treatment is usually focused on managing problems, on managing symptoms, and not really on actually getting a cure, right? So it's easy for them to say that this is permanent, and they say this with all kinds of things, and it's just not true. The body has a remarkable ability to heal itself, and when you give it what it needs and you stay out of its way, then the problem goes away, right? Tinnitus is a pinching of one of the cranial nerves due to an osteoporosis of the skull, and this is going to come up more and more and more because it's becoming more and more common, because these deficiencies already existed, they were already a problem, and now they're just getting worse, right? And there's multiple things that we do to contribute to that. And these mineral deficiencies, right, they're the same ones that are involved in osteoporosis anywhere else. We're calling it osteoporosis of the skull. Most people just don't know, don't make the connection between tinnitus, vertigo, or sometimes migraine headaches, and a whole list of other things that can be caused by pinching those nerves in the skull. And this also goes for other things too, like atrial fibrillation, by the way, with the irregular heartbeat. This is due to a pinching of a nerve in the back. It's actually a back problem, right? It's not a heart problem, it's a back problem, because that nerve shoots through the spine, and the osteoporosis essentially of the spine and the degeneration of the cushioning, the connective tissue cushioning between the discs degenerates, pinches the nerve, and you get that problem. It can also actually go with other problems as well, bladder problems, right? These nerves are connected through the spine, and the osteoporosis involved pinching these nerves can cause you to have an overactive bladder, right? The next question here is, can you make a video about acne? It's very easy for us to say, yeah, it's a digestive problem, it's a blood sugar problem. And I heard these things a bunch of times too before I really understood what that actually means practically, and like what you actually have to do about it, right? Like saying acne is a digestive problem doesn't help you that much if you don't know how to correct the digestion. So it does start with salt, right? I always start with salt because it's more or less the first stage. The first stage really is the mouth, not just the chewing, but the salivary stuff that your body produces to help break down food at the beginning stage, and there's chemical reactions involved there as well, and some things can be absorbed directly in the mouth, especially minerals, colloidal minerals. Then it goes down into the stomach, and that's really where a lot of the action happens. And if the person has a lack of salt and or calcium, by the way, lack of salt and or calcium, they're not going to be producing adequate hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and that's one of the main components of the stomach acid. There's other gastric juices involved here as well, but once the body starts to fail at these critical levels, especially if the stomach's not acidic enough, not going to be absorbing a lot of these components that are going to be involved in the production of gastric juices. And there is a range of them, right? So cleaning up the digestion, using lots of salt, avoiding the glutens that are going to be screwing up the intestines. A lot of people, especially in America, are having problems with dairy as well, especially grain-fed dairy, gluten-fed dairy, right? So that those problem proteins are showing up in the milk, some of the cheeses, sour cream, whatever, and it is affecting the digestive tract as well. And if the inside of the intestine is like a shag carpet inverted, right? There's all these little finger-like villi and microvilli to expand the surface area, because that area is where nutrients are absorbed, right? They're absorbed into the villi. Actually, if there's damage to the intestine and there's little holes in there, then you actually get the whole proteins going in through those holes instead of through the villi. This is how you get dirty blood, right? You get and leaky gut. This is leaky gut. You get undigested proteins going into the blood because they're not going through the villi, because the villi are damaged. So the dirty blood thing is going to have a lot to do with this acne as well. This toxicity in the blood. These are toxic deposits. Essentially, this is going to go for cysts as well, right? Circulation is involved here as well. When you have a digestive problem, now you start to have a circulation problem almost by default, right? So you've got dirty blood circulating around, and if there's a circulation problem on top of that, now you got stagnant dirty blood traveling around. So this shows up on the skin very quickly, very easily. For lots of people, blood sugar has a ton to do with it. For me, blood sugar has a ton to do with it. Vitamin D can have a ton to do with it too, by the way. It's obviously, it's one of the 90 essential nutrients, but definitely I start to notice it because in the winter I do supplement with vitamin D, and there's a period where you're like, I don't know if I should start yet. And you can see it in your skin. I can feel it in my skin. You know, it's my first sign that I need to start supplementing with vitamin D. It's getting too late in the season, you know, and this can have a lot to do with it. Remember, vitamin D is one of the 4 fat-soluble vitamins. D, E, A, and K are the fat-soluble vitamins. You can think of it as DEEK, and vitamin D is one of those. And when we say there's a skin problem, we're saying this is a good fat problem. And this is not just the omegas and the cholesterol, it's also the fat-soluble vitamins. And vitamin D can be critical there in the skin, more so than vitamin K. But you also hear vitamin A and E as well having a lot to do with the skin. A lot of creams and stuff are based on these molecules as well. So taking all this into consideration, getting rid of the glutens, making sure you're taking enough of the good fats, right? Supplementing and food. And we're recommending eggs for this reason, because it has a range, it has all the good fats that you need, and it has cholesterol as well. So that alone is usually enough for most people to clear up whatever acne problem they have or skin problem that they have. This is also going to go for the other, you know, maybe they classify it as more serious, but I've seen acne that's really, really serious. But dermatitis and eczema and these types of things, this is, again, based in the digestion, based in the dirty blood, you know, caused by the digestive problem, and fat deficiencies of good fats, as well as some minerals too, guys. And we mentioned the vitamins, but some minerals like zinc and selenium as well are going to have, you know, a huge role in the skin, and we actually need quite a lot of zinc, for instance. This could be another thing, right? When we just go through the checklist, usually we recommend a starter pack of products anyways. It's going to contain all these things. You're not going to have to worry about it. But if someone, say, you know, was just on a basic supplement protocol and they were still having problems with their acne, our go-tos would be increasing the omegas, especially the omega-3, increasing the zinc, and possibly increasing the vitamin D as well, depending on where they live. Wife's gyno liked the 90 for Life products except for Tangy Tangerine 2.0, claiming it had too much vitamin A. How can that pose an issue? Well, too much of anything can pose an issue, but for all the ingredients in that one product, and there's quite a lot of ingredients in that one product, vitamin A would be probably the least of my concerns. I wouldn't really be concerned about vitamin A at all, actually, in almost any case. I've never seen any type of problem with taking too much vitamin A, personally. There's other vitamins that can cause problems, but not vitamin A. I mean, I'm sure you can, it's just the doses involved, they're not there to worry about, in my opinion. They're not strong enough. The question here is, do you use just a pinch of salt during a 2-day water fast? And this is really important because we talk a lot about salt, right? You need salt to make the stomach acid. You need salt for other reasons as well. You need sodium as well, but the chloride in the salt, you need that for strong stomach acid. You need that to digest food and to absorb nutrients, especially minerals. And having said that, the electrolyte component of salt, you know, this really differs between person to person. It depends on how big you are. It depends on how old you are. You know, as by the way, a lot of things get diagnosed in puberty because people are in a growth spurt, and that changes their nutrient needs at that time, right? You need more nutrients to grow than you do to maintain. So there's many things that can impact how much salt you need, and the amount of salt you need today will probably differ from tomorrow, unless you do the exact same thing every day. But it changes a lot based on your level of activity, right? There's many things that can dehydrate you. You have 1 extra cup of coffee, now you need more salt because it dehydrates you, and salt is critical in actual hydration. So when this person asks, do I do just a pinch, or you can't give a quantity, because quantity depends on you, what you need today, and you have to be able to gauge that. It's I think it's one of the keys to good health, is being able to gauge your salt needs specifically to the minute, to the hour. You should learn this by doing it, and learn the sense that I need more salt right now. You just get this message in your head, I need more salt, and put a little bit more in your water or whatever, right? What do you recommend for optimal thyroid health? Not much more than the 90 essential nutrients, truthfully. Now, most people know, even medical doctors know, that iodine is involved in thyroid health, but that's only one of the essential nutrients, and it's only one of the nutrients involved in thyroid. One of the other more important ones is selenium and its direct cofactor, copper. And selenium deficiency and copper deficiency are going to cause big problems in the body as well, regardless, of the thyroid, but it has a ton to do with the thyroid health. You can give the thyroid iodine, all you want. It might not be the most major deficiency involved, and it usually doesn't get rid of the problem. It manages the problem like most other treatments out there in the marketplace. So selenium and copper and iodine, these are all part of the 90 essential nutrients. Each one of them have multiple cofactors themselves, so that's the most important thing. Now, if you have a overactive thyroid, hyperthyroid, then you do want to be eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables as well, because they will actually down regulate the action of the thyroid. If you have low thyroid, then you do not want to be eating the cruciferous vegetables. Actually, Ben Fuchs on this point, he's going to be saying just eat cruciferous vegetables because they're great anyways, but it is a general standard advice for people with hypothyroidism to avoid the broccoli and the Brussels sprouts and the cauliflower, the cruciferous vegetables. There's also, for thyroid health, sea greens, sea moss, kelp, and anything that really actually is grown in the sea and is a plant, especially if it's dried, concentrated, it's going to have a large effect on the thyroid. And it's actually one of the additional products that Dr. Wallach would recommend on top of the 90 essential nutrients, of course on top of avoiding the bad foods for all the reasons of getting in the way of absorption of these nutrients, and screwing up the body in other ways, right? If you're eating the bad foods, causing more stress on the body, now your body needs more nutrients to fix all that, right? It needs more good stuff because now you need to repair things, and you need more to repair than you do to maintain. Thyroid health, not that much specific. 90 essential nutrients, avoid the bad foods. You don't need the emphasis on like eggs and good fats and stuff that we normally give to a lot of problems, but the one thing that I would focus on is the cruciferous vegetables if it's hyper, and the sea greens. In any case, you take the sea greens. Dandruff and dry scalp issues, what's the case? So again, it's going to start in digestion. All skin problems are going to start in digestion, right? There's, again, on the textbook, it's caused by deficiencies. What are those deficiencies caused by? They're usually caused by a digestive problem, right? The good fats actually are something that we can get in our food supply. Not everybody has acne, not everybody has dandruff, right? If you're absorbing these fats that are in the food supply, you will not have these problems. There is many diets that are deficient in these compounds, especially veganism is quite low on the omega-3s, and obviously there's no cholesterol, there's no plant-based cholesterol, right? So they're avoiding that as well. And you do see a lot of these problems in vegans. So dandruff and dry scalp, clean up the digestion means you're taking enough salt, you're avoiding the glutens, possibly digestive enzymes, by the way, could help. I forgot to mention that for any of the other skin problems as well, because digestive enzymes can aid in the absorption of these nutrients in the stomach and in the intestine. A good digestive enzyme is going to have something with chloride in it, probably betaine hydrochloride usually. Could have salt directly in it, but a great digestive enzyme is going to have bile in it. Ox bile is kind of the most common on the market, and it works extremely well, right? So then this is because your liver, a healthy liver, which needs a lot of minerals and nutrients, by the way, selenium be the most important one there. The liver produces the bile. Bile goes into the gallbladder secretes it into the intestine. And when the bile meets the foods, especially the fats, it actually has enzymes in it that allow you to absorb and utilize those fats, right? So it's critical. And if any of these things have been screwed up for long term, your liver probably is under function, right? The gallbladder might have stones in it. And this will impact, like you could digest the food from your mouth. Stomach, you could have enough acid, that's fine, breaks it down, goes into the intestine. Now there's not enough bile to meet it there. You're not going to be absorbing those fats. You're not going to be utilizing those fats, right? This deficiency is going to contribute to the dry skin, brittle nails, right? Hair problems, all kinds of soft tissue problems, right? Eyes are soft tissue, heart's soft tissue, right? Lungs are soft tissue, brain's soft tissue. And they're all made essentially of the same stuff in different ratios. But this digestive problem is going to contribute to the heart of it usually. Any advice for having a stronger stomach other than salt? The only other thing is going further, with, again, digestive enzymes before meals can make your stomach stronger. But it's quite easy to reset the stomach. The hardest things that we deal with are people who have been on antacids or proton pump inhibitors for a long time, and this inhibits their body's ability to produce stomach acid, so it takes quite a bit longer to reset it with them, and we do a lot of salt flushes with them. That's why we instruct people when they're doing the salt flush to repeat it if it was easy to do. Basically, if they could drink a whole bunch of salt, like some people can take 4 or 5 sips and they're like, oh, I'm done. But if you can drink the whole glass, you need to continue doing that. And we find that a lot with people who have been on antacids and proton pump inhibitors, stomach acid lowering drugs, that they need to do that quite a few times. And often they need to wean off of those drugs, not for any withdrawal reasons, mainly for psychological reasons. You stop using that drug right away, you could actually go through some serious digestive distress, and people often don't want to ride that out, so they'll cut their dose in half or something like that. And it's a strange hump for us to have to overcome, because the body should work properly, quite easily actually, especially with the salt component. That should not be a big problem. The other thing is avoiding carbonated drinks completely. Don't screw around with carbonated drinks at all, because carbonated drinks lower the stomach acid. Oh, someone just said here, girlfriend's on proton pump inhibitors to prevent pains in the chest area from inflammation causing foods. Even though she's been following a super strict diet, she is unable to get off the medicine. So the doctors say this, there are certain foods, spicy foods and whatever. People come to us and they say that I avoid this list of food because I have heartburn, right? And it's usually actually quite a different list of food, different things throw different people off. And it's because everybody digests different and reacts differently to different proteins. None of this really matters, because our job is just to acidify the stomach, and it's actually quite easy. The body takes hydrochloric acid, and if it does have enough calcium, let's go into that because we mentioned that earlier. Calcium is involved in every muscle constriction in the body. Calcium for constriction, magnesium for relaxation. This is why calcium and magnesium are the two most important nutrients involved in blood pressure problems as well, because the blood pressure is governed by the action of the muscles in the veins pushing the blood around, and the muscles in the heart pushing the blood around. So if there's not enough calcium in the body, one of the things that the body can do is take calcium away, because it needs to maintain its calcium levels in the blood, just like all its nutrients in the blood. And if it's low, it's playing musical chairs with these nutrients. One of the places that it could take nutrients away from are the chief cells, which are the cells that squirt out the stomach acid into the stomach. So you could be using enough salt, and if you don't have enough calcium, one of the things that could be failing is the body's ability to actually get that hydrochloric acid into the stomach. What could also happen is there's another muscle on the top of the stomach, again governed by calcium in its constriction, magnesium in its relaxation, and if it's taken away from that muscle, the sphincter on there that connects the esophagus with the stomach, now you're going to be able to have acid splash up into the esophagus. This is heartburn. This is reflux, right? And by the way, if it was your actual stomach acid the way it's supposed to be, if it went up into the esophagus, it would burn through the esophagus. Right? Your stomach acid should be strong enough to digest meat down to the bone. You can bite your finger off and digest the entire thing. That means it will eat through the esophagus as well. This is why the stomach has a stomach lining, so that it can tolerate that level of acidity. If your stomach is not acidic enough, then there's stuff in the stomach that is not being digested correctly by default. You're getting things living. You're getting bugs living in the bacteria, fungus, mold living in the stomach, fermenting in the stomach. And they release gases, and they cause gas to go up. This is what could also spark the esophagus opening up, is a gas coming up. It's opening up to let the gas from the bacteria that are fermenting in the stomach, because bacteria can't live in a strong acidic environment, right? The stomach is supposed to be sterile, and when it has enough stomach acid, it is sterile. And if it's not, again, you got things living in it, and they produce gases and waste and that type of stuff. When the body opens up to burp it out, you could get some stomach acid, weak stomach acid, up with that, and that's what burns the esophagus. But it doesn't burn through it because it's not acidic enough. The rest of this question, even though she's been following a super strict diet, no idea what that means, right? You could eat whatever you want. If there's not enough salt on it, it's not going to matter. Unless you're only eating, fruits and vegetables. Most of them have enzymes in them, or they're pre-digested, and you could digest a lot of fruits a lot easier than meat, for instance, right? So we don't ever really know what a strict diet means. People come to us all the time and they say, I eat well, or I eat clean, or don't know what that means, really. So the proton pump inhibitors are there to lower the stomach acid. Our MO is to increase the stomach acid by any means necessary. Salt first and foremost, digestive enzymes secondarily, avoiding the other things like carbonated drinks, right? So correcting those underlying problems. You don't need to be on proton pump inhibitors. For beginners, do you recommend mineral testing via hair analysis, for example? Truthfully, it depends on your pockets, right? If you have the money to get a hair analysis, I've seen lots of people like this. Like, look, I just want to get the test. I'm gonna get the products anyways. I just want to make sure. Fine, right? It's gonna be probably $100, $200, maybe $300, depending on where you are. Now, me personally, as a salesperson, and we used to sell hair analysis. We still kind of do. We have a store down in Windsor. It offers hair analysis, but I was there in person and I would sell them in person. But me as a salesperson, I would rather sell you nutrition than hair analysis. So if there's a choice, this means if there's a budget, my choice would be to get the nutrients and just dive in, right? Because the hair analysis, no matter what, no matter who you are, is going to tell you that you have a list of deficiencies. And we don't want you to go in and say, okay, I need more vitamin C, I need more manganese, I need more zinc. We just give you the 90 essential nutrients. The hair analysis can be useful if you see one thing that's just crazy low, and it'll probably match up with the symptoms that they told us about during the interview process. Then that's great. We can boost that one nutrient. We can boost those 3 nutrients. But it's not that useful otherwise, because we're still going to give you the same essential recommendation. And usually when you just give people the basics, like when you just give people a spread of nutrients, they usually just feel better, right? So you usually don't need to go into the specifics. Like earlier we were talking about, there's specific products that could be used for the thyroid. I don't like using them first, right? I like using a package of products first, focusing on digestion first, because usually that's enough. If there's still, not maximum recovery or something like that, now we're gonna go fishing for other things that could be getting in the way, or other things that could more specifically target that problem, especially herbal products that could help speed up. We don't even know how a lot of these things work, right? We don't know how a lot of the actual active mechanism in a lot of these herbs. So we don't really know why, but we know that they help with a lot of specific problems. So no, for beginners, I wouldn't necessarily get a hair analysis. I would get a hair analysis if you have the money to do so, if you're super serious, either about prevention or about figuring out what's actually contributing to your problem, because you can see other interesting things on the hair analysis, right? You can see, again, toxic metal loads, you can see parasites, yeast, fungus, mold, worms, bacteria, virus, right? It can give you food sensitivities. In my experience, it's not that accurate hair analysis. Like it'll spit out a list of foods that you should avoid, and I don't find that much value in that list. I would rather get a blood test for food allergies, but it does give you a ton of information either way. And it'll also tell you which specific, some of them, now tests are different. You can get a live hair analysis, or you can get a static hair analysis. I prefer the live hair analysis, which is one that's done in person. You go in, take a little piece of your hair out, they use the little white part at the end, and they measure that, and it happens in real time, and you get your report within like 30 minutes. And the other ones, you send them out and they run analysis on it. Some of them in an actual wet lab, and they're actually using reagents and they're running it through a machine physically. I like the hair analysis again because it's automated. It's a machine that does it for you. And when it's live, I do feel that it actually retains a little bit more information and possibly more accurate information, but I'm not 100% up to date on that, because either way, all hair analysis will give you a good spectrum of information that you can use. So just again, do you want to pay for it, or do you need to pay for it? Not really, right? And there's a bunch of tests, by the way, that could help us, pinpoint a blood sugar problem or an infection or something like that. But we don't really often, if ever, recommend that people go get tests, because you usually don't need them, right? We don't need more information. We know that your body's not doing well. We know that there's rampant deficiencies in the population. We know that there's rampant infections in the population with parasites, especially some pernicious ones like Candida. We know these things. I could just assume that you have a blood sugar problem, assume that you have a digestive problem, tell you to act like a celiac whether you are or not. I don't care if you have a test that shows you're a celiac. If you act like a celiac, you're going to do better. If you act on your digestion and your blood sugar, and you eat in ways that promote healthy blood sugar, you're going to have a benefit regardless of what the blood test tells you or what the hair analysis tells you, right? If you take all the nutrients and you absorb them, you're going to feel better regardless of what the hair analysis said. And also, even with the live hair analysis, I don't believe that it's calibrated anywhere near towards what we actually need. And remember, it's always going to have to factor in some kind of average, right? Whatever system they're using, and the system that we use is really good, right? It's from Germany. I think it works great. It gives us lots of information. But their nutrient values, they're not going to be calibrated necessarily on the FDA's RDA, recommended daily allowance, but they're probably going to be too low, generally, right? And again, what are they basing this on? The height and the weight of each human, it's very hard to factor this in, what each human actually needs on a nutrient level. So to come up with a recommended daily allowance, we have to do it on some kind of average person, right? And as you know, there is really not much such thing as an average person, right? What is an average 24-year-old male compared to an average 38-year-old woman? These are hugely different humans, right? And this is one of the reasons, by the way, why I personally don't agree with the whole fluoride thing or anything of that nature, where it gives a standard dose to the whole population, because the infant is going to be getting a much higher dose per body weight than the adult, right? Especially the overweight adult. They can tolerate quite a lot of whatever the toxin is, whereas it affects the younger, the smaller, the weaker, the older much more, right? So that's just to say that every hair analysis is going to be based on some kind of recommended daily allowance for these things, and I don't trust those companies or anything. I don't trust anyone other than Dr. Wallach to actually, really know the dose, really give the solid dose, and often it's way higher than what the FDA says, right? Way higher. Like one of our main products has 16,000% of the B12 that the FDA says we need, and that might not be enough for you on today, right? You might have a super active day. That might not be anywhere near enough for you. Just keep that in mind. If a hair analysis comes out and says, hey, you're good in these levels, I don't trust them to know what the levels are. I don't trust them to know how much manganese I need, selenium I need. Hey man, what's your favorite natural electrolyte? Like for a homemade Gatorade? Just salt, guys. Salt. Salt is the electrolyte. Now I'm gonna go in and say, despite my lack of experience using celery juice, it is said to be a phenomenal electrolyte source as well. So you can definitely try that out yourself as well. I was recommended to get the 90 essential nutrients and psyllium husk. Do you just sell psyllium on its own? We do not sell psyllium husk. You can buy psyllium husk from the grocery store. You can buy it from a bulk food store. It's a good way to get it. And you just take a ton of it. Just like diatomaceous earth, psyllium husk works very similar to diatomaceous earth in its mechanism. So this is so HIV doesn't evolve into full-blown AIDS. Well, one of the most important components there is going to be, guys, obviously avoiding the bad foods and eating the right foods and whatever, but also specific nutrient deficiency. Selenium has a ton to do with this, because it has a ton to do with antioxidants. It has a ton to do with our immune system. Selenium is what allows our body to actually utilize glutathione, which is the sort of the master antioxidant. It's produced in the body. It's produced in every cell in the body. And without selenium, our bodies can only use glutathione to a very limited degree, meaning it can really only go and neutralize like one free radical, for instance, whereas in the presence of selenium, and selenium has many cofactors as well, but in the presence of selenium, the glutathione can go on and do a much more effective job at cleaning up free radicals, neutralizing free radicals, and getting them ready for disposal in the body. It's kind of a magic little process there. So for somebody who has HIV, my opinion would be just to strengthen the immune system as much as possible. All the things we talk about, getting rid of the bad foods, making sure the digestion is clear. I would go in and work on circulation itself, right? It's not just exercise, it's not just blood movement, but circulation of the lymph. And there's some specific things that can really help with that, like a swing set or a trampoline are the two, I think, most effective free things that you can do. Massage can target the lymphatic system, so lymphatic massage, as well as some machines. There's shaker machine. These machines can be quite effective. They can also be quite expensive depending on your market, but just a machine that you stand on and it just shakes you. And we found phenomenal results with this, with circulation. And by the way, one of the ways that we measure circulation when we have the equipment to do it, it's kind of primitive. It's not like you put them in an MRI and it tells you they've got a circulation problem here and here. And we use a chi machine, which is basically a machine that you just stick your legs into, two little feet holders, and it just moves back and forth. Feet's in here, you're laying down on a table, it moves back and forth in a steady rhythm, and we keep somebody on that for 10-20 minutes or so. And when you turn it off, there's a wave that comes across, like if you're healthy, if your circulation is good, the wave comes from your feet all the way to your head, all the way back down to your feet, and then usually back up. It's kind of like when you get off a boat, you've been on a boat all day and you're all wonky. When the chi machine stops, and most people, by the way, we put a civilian on the chi machine, they're sitting there, you can see the look on their face like, what the heck am I doing here? But when it stops, you get this wave. Now, if they've come to us with a serious health problem, especially the diabetes, there's huge circulation problems involved in blood sugar problems, often these, and they're overweight, often these people, the wave only comes up to their knee, right? Or the wave only comes up to their waist, and we ask them, right? So we make them continue to lay down on the table for a minute or two after the Qi machine is stopped moving. And by the way, you can get a Qi machine for like $40 on Amazon, right? So this can actually be a really effective tool that you can have in your house for your own circulation, and if you want to measure somebody's circulation. If that wave only goes up to their knee, they have terrible circulation. We've had people who say, I just feel my feet buzzing. That means there's a circulation problem in the whole body, right? Some people don't feel anything at all after it, and then after you deal with them a while and you clean up their digestion, you get the nutrients into them, and you get them on one of these machines regularly, or get them onto some sort of circulation discipline regularly, then you can put them back on the Qi machine. You can, now next week the wave comes up to their knee, and then the next week it comes up to their chest, and then eventually they get it all the way to their head, and that means you have healthy circulation. So that's a cheap and easy way to do that. I'm saying this because all these really serious problems, you know, like somebody who is showing symptoms of AIDS, cancer, right, or, you know, whatever, you name it, a serious problem. It's going to be digestive, it's going to be circulation, it's going to be nutrient deficiencies, and it's probably going to be bad foods and or toxicity. All four of these things are probably going to be involved. There's other things that could be involved as well. Sleep could be involved, bad sleep, stress could be involved, right? A list of things that could be involved. Environmental things, radiation, right, could be impacting the blood, affects how the blood moves around. You cannot be a healthy person if you do not have healthy blood. It's one of the things that can affect the blood. So we would take all the nutrients, avoid all the bad foods, increase the antioxidants, especially increase the antioxidants, and I would especially increase the selenium, if that was me. And it shouldn't be something you need to do forever, right? When anybody comes to us with any problem, even if it's something like a virus or HIV, whatever, they said that you're gonna have it forever, then my opinion is usually when you just strengthen the immune system and keep it that way, these symptoms don't reappear. This also goes for things like herpes, right? Well over half the adult population in the Western world carries the herpes antibodies, and very few of them show any symptoms of it. Right? Just getting the body to a basic level of health, you shouldn't actually have to deal with the symptoms of these problems, and it's hard to even call them problems at that point, because really all there is antibodies in the blood. And we carry all kinds of antibodies in the blood, and it doesn't mean that we're actually sick, you know. And by the way, antibodies, with a lot of these autoimmune problems, like they use antibodies as a measure to determine whether you have a problem, yet there's not one disease that has 100% correlation between antibodies appearing in the blood and a person actually having that problem, right? Rheumatoid arthritis is a great example of that. The different antibodies that they measure, I think the highest one is that 80% of people who they say have rheumatoid arthritis have this antibody. What about the other 20%, right? It can't be a causative relationship if it doesn't appear in 100% of the people. So, any idea why tuna gives me horrible heartburn? Not enough salt, probably chronically. Possibly not enough calcium. We talked about that earlier in the live. We are going to save this live so you can rewatch that. Can you correct mental illness with the vitamins and minerals? Also, what advice do you have for people who are constantly struggling with depression? And if it does help, how does it help? Well, a lot of the mental problems will have to do with our emotional flare-ups, right? There's a lot of mental aspects to this, right? What is your emotional reaction to a situation, all that kind of stuff that has to do with your priming up here. But blood sugar is going to have a ton to do with it, right? There's a lot of people who don't even notice it, but they get extremely irritable when they're hungry, for instance. Low blood sugar, right? The fluctuations in blood sugar will be causing fluctuations in mood. So if you can stabilize blood sugar, you can stabilize a lot of the most extreme problems involved in mental illness. And we're talking like schizophrenia here. We're talking about, people just do crazy things. This is often a direct result of a blood sugar spike. Right? Dr. Wallach says it's like a drunk. You can have a good drunk who just has a couple drinks and goes to sleep, and you can have a bad drunk who has a couple drinks and starts punching holes in the wall. Right? Neither of those are really good, though. Right? Being on the low blood sugar, and I believe that's much closer to depression, and being on the high blood sugar, and that's much closer to anxiety. So depression and anxiety usually go together, and I do believe it has a ton to do with blood sugar. Also, gonna have a ton to do with some trace minerals, especially lithium. Right? Lithium's not just a drug, it's based on a mineral. And Dr. Wallach has a strong case to make that one mineral has has a ridiculous impact on human behavior. Again, especially in the most extreme ends. We're talking serial killers. We're talking about people who harm other people. The lithium deficiency could have a ton to do with that. There's other minerals involved as well, especially the calcium family. Calcium and its cofactors. It's not just involved in bones, but also muscles. Remember from earlier, muscles are what push blood around and all these things. I mean, there's so many ways that the body can fail by not having these certain things. And if your pumps aren't working properly, your body's not going to be working properly. This contributes not only to physical ailments, which depress us, but it also slows us down to the things that we actually need to do, right? Say you love golfing, you can't golf because you got arthritis, right? That's going to actually affect your mental health. It affects the way that you live your life. So it is much easier to navigate basically everything when you are healthy, when you got your blood sugar under control and all that kind of stuff. You can still have depression. You can still not be happy with the way things are in life. The only real response that I know of that does anything at all is action, right? That seems to be the only consistent response that really actually targets the problem, action. And part of this is just distracting you. It's distracting you from thinking about that thing, but getting out of that mental spiral is extremely important, right? Like you stay in depression if you focus on depression. So just action itself, can at least pull your brain out of that. Right now I'm focused on doing this. How am I going to be depressed? I don't even have time to think about it. I got to talk, right? So doing active work, exercise is said to help quite a lot. I believe it does help quite a lot. Obviously, social connections, I think, are extremely, extremely important, especially when somebody's depressed. They usually cut themselves off from those social connections. So either reestablishing or establishing them, going out and doing something social. And this is stuff that people don't usually want to do when they're depressed, right? They usually don't want to actually do the things that would help to get them out of it. But when you add all this up and you have a healthy body, right, and you got all by the way, that blood sugar problem has a lot to do with nutrients, right? Specific nutrients, specific minerals, specific cofactors. So you give your body the 90 essential nutrients. You don't put garbage into it, right? Remember, garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. If you're making your body, if you're eating Doritos and Pepsi, your body is attempting to rebuild and regenerate its cells out of Doritos and Pepsi, right? So what kind of body is that going to be? What kind of brain is that going to be, right? Is that going to be a brain that's more susceptible to depression, anxiety? I think so, right? I do think so. So can you correct mental illness completely with nutrition? No, I don't believe so. Because this is an interactive process, right? Your thought processes feed your emotions, right? If you're thinking negative things and you're focusing on all the bad stuff that happened to you and how you're a victim and how could this person do this to me, and that's going to keep you down, right? So breaking that cycle, it's imperative as well. You can't just stabilize the blood sugar, and if you don't and not correct, the diseases of attitude, the fundamental problem is not going to go away. It's going to be the same with addiction as well, right? You have to break that cycle mentally. You have to actually participate in that process. And you have to want to change. Like they kind of always say, right? If somebody wants to be a victim, you can't really help them out of it. They have to get themselves out of it. How do you correct hyperhidrosis? An annoying issue that I've gotten no real solution for from doctors. They put brackets, shocker. In my opinion, the real thing to do is salt, right? Salt has a ton to do with the way that the body hydrates itself. Now, I kind of stuttered there because there could be something more important. It could be structured water. It could be more important. It could be that your cells aren't actually under-functioning at the fundamental level and they're not accepting water through the cells properly. And structured water can hydrate the cells, can hydrate the body at a level that we can't even really describe. Science doesn't really describe it. We're talking metaphysics now, basically, right? Because to science, water is water, and to us, it's not. Right? And not only is it salt water, right? Salt and water are needed for proper hydration, but adding structured water into your program or into your life without nutrition, structured water can work on its own, can actually help your body rehydrate itself at the cellular level. Chances are that has a lot to do with it. By the way, I haven't liked talking about this much because it makes the whole process very difficult. We're already recommending quite a lot of stuff. We're recommending stopping most people's favorite foods, right? The glutens and the oils and whatever, processed meats, well done red meat. We're telling you to stop these things and buy all this other stuff, these supplements, buy all this stuff, do a liver detox, wear a frequency tuning disc bracelet. Like, we're already recommending a lot. And now we got to come in and talk about how in the city or even in the country, if you're holding a phone, you got a Wi-Fi near you, you got high voltage power lines near you or a cell phone tower near you, doesn't matter where you are, but more likely in the city, you're having way more exposure to radiation. This is causing the body to underfunction at many different levels. One of them is actually the bottom level of the cell. Parts of my body go numb / fall asleep quickly if I'm sitting or laying down. How can I help that? Well, all the things that we're talking about here, especially digestion, right? If there's a digestive problem, it usually leads directly to a circulation problem. This is essentially a circulation problem. I would say the next most important thing is blood sugar, right? We see this a lot usually with low blood sugar, where they get cold very easily, or they have the cold extremities or the numb extremities, you know. So I would go in, I would use enough salt, first of all, cut out the gluten, second of all, take all the 90 essential nutrients, third of all. The only specific mineral to call out here would be the chromium involved in blood sugar. And we don't normally name specific nutrients. Dr. Wallach doesn't like naming specific nutrients because he doesn't want you to run out and buy chromium, right? Chromium has at least 23 cofactors, direct cofactors, and one of them, vanadium, is actually extremely important in this mechanism as well. And that's why our specific blood sugar support product is going to have both chromium and vanadium in it, and a handful of herbs that we already know, the wider world knows, helps with blood sugar. And often, by the way, just correcting the digestion in general, like if this person's overweight, that means they have a digestive problem by default. That means they basically have a blood sugar problem by default as well. So often, just by correcting the digestion, especially with increasing the salt, getting rid of the gluten, you know, you're going to see a result on your actual numbness or coldness or anything like that. And by the way, we've seen skinny people come in with this, regular people come in with this, and extremely overweight people come in with this. So it's a lot of people say it has to do with body weight, like, oh, it's just because you're so skinny, that's why you get cold so often. But there's big people that have it too. A big person is going to be more likely to have high blood sugar, and that means they're actually going to run warm instead of running cold. But there's still, like, in my opinion, they're just as likely to have these problems because people of all weights come to us with these problems. And you can have a blood sugar problem whether you're big or small or skinny or fat. Is creatine bad? No, I don't think creatine is bad. A lot of creatine products are bad because they're impure or they have crappy ingredients in them, right? When things are sold in the weightlifting category of the health food store, they're usually not that good. You usually look at the ingredients and they're not that good. If I was going to take creatine, I would take pure creatine, and that's it. And I would look into the brand and make sure that their practices are good and clean and solid. We don't like to sell our products based on bashing other products, but there's a ton of things out there of products being tested, especially just in general health food stores, retail health food stores, especially where a lot of people buy their protein and their creatine and their pre-workout and whatever, and they're tested and they don't actually have the nutrient levels that they're said to have in it, the active ingredient that they're said to have in it, and have a bunch of contaminants in it. And I'm not saying that's the whole industry, I'm just saying that it's a problem in the industry, so you do have to be aware of your sources, and to my knowledge, we don't sell a creatine, so I would have to tell you to go elsewhere. But if it were me, by the way, creatine wouldn't be my go-to. I would take the 90 essential nutrients first and foremost. If I was weightlifting, you know, I would increase the protein with a quality protein shake with that has more minerals in it and more other nutrients in it, not just the protein. Especially bone soup, I would go for these other compounds: bones, bone soup, cartilage, eggs. Like these are far more important to me than creatine itself. There's also this other product here I've been taking a while now. It's called HGH Youth Complex, and it has the precursor amino acids for the HGH, human growth hormone, that your body makes in its own cells, right? So it gives your body the raw materials to make the HGH, which you would need, you know, to repair and build muscle. What minerals, nutrient deficiencies are linked to arthritis? That one's easy. It's the calcium family. Calcium and its cofactors. Some vitamins involved as well, but we're talking about calcium, magnesium, boron, strontium, zinc. There's a list of them, and they need to be in a specific ratio, right? And we spoke a little bit earlier about phosphorus contributing, like increased phosphorus intake leading to increased calcium need, because you need 2 parts calcium, 1 part phosphorus. And if you're eating food that has, say, 1 part calcium and 18 parts phosphorus, well, now you need you can do that math in 36. You need 36 times more calcium to compensate for that, right? That doesn't mean total dose. That means dose relative to the food that you've eaten. Phosphorus shows up particularly in colas, right? So we say colas are the worst of the carbonated drinks. You don't want to drink carbonated drinks in general, but colas increase your phosphorus a lot because of the phosphoric acid in it. It's part of what makes it cola. Also meats, right? There is truth to the vegan campaign against meats, right? Meats can contribute to health problems because when you eat meat, you have to eat the other nutrients as well and you won't have a health problem. But when you eat meat, especially when you eat organ meat, the phosphorus ratio is very high. There's lots of phosphorus in it, so it greatly increases your need for calcium as well. This can contribute to the arthritis, to the osteoporosis, to the gingivitis, to the insomnia, to the blood pressure problems, all these problems that have to do with this family of nutrients, which is calcium and its cofactors. By the way, vitamin C is also one of the most important cofactors for calcium. And they can get really complicated when we start talking about this, right? This is why we rely on products where they're already formulated in their proper ratios based on Dr. Wallach and his research and with animals and humans, and because you shouldn't need to worry about all this stuff, right? Because if you are trying to tailor your own dose, I mean, you're going to get blown away by how complicated it can get. Again, for instance, the vitamin C being a direct cofactor to the calcium family here, especially also in joint formation and inflammation. Remember, arthritis is defined as inflammation of the joints, so this is going to have a lot to do with the connective tissue, right? Vitamin C, C for connective tissue, basically, as Ben Fuchs puts it, is extremely important in allowing the body to get the raw materials to the joints, right? It's a cofactor. And those raw materials are not just the calcium family, it's also the connective tissue itself, which has a lot to do with sulfur components, right? Sulfur itself is an essential mineral, but it shows up in a lot of these things like glucosamine sulfate, right? Chondroitin sulfate, MSM. These are all sulfur compounds that are all promoted as supporting the health of the joints. These things all go together. You need the minerals, you need the connective tissue, you need the vitamins to go into that as well. Of course, obviously the rest of the 90 essential nutrients are going to matter, because if they're messing with some other part of the body, now the body's focused on that, and you need more nutrients to deal with that problem, and increases deficiencies elsewhere and leads to other problems as well. Quit taking prescription medication this is a comment, it's not me saying it. Quit taking a prescription medication for pain a year and a half ago. Any way to help regular dopamine besides the 90? I wouldn't do anything specific for dopamine other than take the 90, avoid the bad foods. You know, I would increase the eggs quite a lot, because eggs have a lot to do with your hormones. Your hormones are made of cholesterol, right? Sex hormones are made of cholesterol, and all this has to do with mood, right? So it's not necessarily dopamine itself. I think dopamine is a product, you know, of how the body, mind, and soul is functioning. So I would just focus on supporting the body as much as possible, doing all the things that we talk about, nothing specific. And you could detox from the medication as well. And there's going to be, everybody needs a detox anyways, but if you were on drugs for a while, it doesn't really matter which pharmaceutical drug, you're going to have definitely an increased need for detox. What do you suggest for really dry skin, mostly legs? I take vitamins and I eat relatively healthy. So we had this question earlier, and we had these kind of statements earlier too, and taking vitamins doesn't mean that much to us. Don't know which type you're taking, don't know which doses, don't know which companies, and either way, you only need 16 vitamins, right, out of the 90 essential nutrients. There's a lot left over, and only a few vitamins are directly involved with the health of the skin, especially the fat-soluble vitamins D, E, A, and K. But it's going to be more important the good fats, right? So when someone says, I eat relatively healthy, no idea what that means, because we're not sharing criteria here for this, right? We're going to tell you to avoid the inflammatory foods, especially the glutens, wheat, barley, rye, and oats. I put quinoa on that list as well, and I would research, everybody should do this, everybody should research what a celiac can and cannot eat, and pretend you're a celiac and eat that way. And that will prevent a lot of inflammation in the intestine, so that you can absorb those good fats that are involved in the skin. You need a bunch of those good fats to have healthy skin. If you do that, chances are alone, skin will not be dry. Be careful with the type of salt you consume. That's true. I often get asked though, they say, well, if you don't have another option, would you use table salt? And my answer is yes. I do carry a salt shaker with me. If I do forget it, I'm going to use table salt, because you still need salt to digest the food that you're eating, regardless, right? So even if it's just simple sodium chloride table salt, sure, there's going to be something to say about its toxicity and about its inferiority to the other natural salts, but if I don't have natural salt, I have to use table salt. Now, I personally wish table salt just didn't exist. It doesn't need to exist. There's enough salt in this world. We don't need to process it down and bleach it and add iodine to it, in my opinion, right? But it is what it is. You go into a restaurant and there's only table salt on the table, you've got to use that table salt. Now you're going to be contributing to possible digestive distress, right? It's not likely that the food is going to be cooked with enough salt, especially since everybody thinks salt's bad for us. Restaurants, especially conscientious restaurants, think they're doing us a favor by limiting the salt in the food, right? They think they're doing us a favor by not having butter in the kitchen and having margarine instead. They don't know better, right? So it just is up to you. You have to know that most of the food that you're eating is going to be cooked with table salt anyways. Even if the restaurant puts out sea salt for you, they cook their food with table salt. Even if they give you a glass of filtered water, especially because you asked for it, you wouldn't believe how many times you ask them. They put a glass of water on the table, and you say, is this tap water or filtered? And they say, oh, it's tap water. I say, do you have filtered water? And they say, yes. So they had filtered water, and they served you tap water anyways. But often they do serve you filtered water, but then they make your soups and they make your food with tap water, right? So you have to be aware of this. It makes it seem like, we can't eat anywhere safely, and it's just so overwhelming. But just being aware means I don't really order soup from restaurants, right? They don't usually make it with filtered water. You have to be very clear about what you want to put in your body and find that stuff, right? So if you're serious about salt, like I'm serious about salt, carry your own salt shaker. Thoughts on eating just raw fruit for healing? It'll give you short-term benefits for sure, especially if it's organic. If you're eating only fruits, guess what you're not eating? You're not eating Doritos, right? You're not eating potentially bad dairy products. You're not eating processed carbs. You're not eating most of the bad foods if you're only eating fruits. Fruits are very easy to digest, right? It's going to have a huge benefit on you. It's also going to have a huge benefit on you just to not eat any food at all, just to fast, right? So it's not necessarily the fruits that are doing the healing. It is getting away from the bad foods that's doing most of the healing, right? If you concentrate those fruits down into juices, you're going to concentrate whatever nutrients are in them. Remember that plants can make vitamins, amino acids, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, but they can't make minerals, right? So when a food is advertised as having this mineral in it or whatever, we don't count on it to be in there, right? So you're not going to get everything you need from food no matter what you eat. But if you do just eat fruits, especially in the short term, you're probably going to experience benefit. But guess what? You probably experience benefit going pure carnivore as well, right? Or going pure vegan as well. There's a ton of examples, especially now. There's a big camp of people who left veganism and went to carnivorism, and they were eating the standard American diet, most of them. They moved to veganism, and they feel better. Again, they're not on the Doritos or whatever. They feel better. They're eating real food for the most part. Then they start to degenerate because there's certain things missing from that diet, and there's certain things missing from all diets. That's why we promote the 90 essential nutrients separately from the food message itself. They experienced the benefit for a while, and then they started to get worse. Then they switch over to carnivore. Now they experience a whole different set of benefits, right? They say, I feel so much better. I was such an idiot doing that, and da-da. But they're going to get new problems, right? Especially we talked about earlier, eating a bunch of meat, eating a bunch of organs. If that's not balanced with increased mineral intake, it's going to cause mineral deficiencies. This is why it's actually optimal to eat the whole animal, right? When you eat the whole animal, we were talking about that calcium to phosphorus ratio, 2 calcium, 1 phosphorus. Eating the entire animal is a 2-to-1 ratio. It's how it's supposed to be. It's how we're supposed to eat animals. So there's a lot of these carnivores that are just making that mistake and focusing too much on certain parts of the animals, like the muscle or the eggs, right? Whereas it's the spine and the organs and all the connective tissue, the bones, right? Grind up the bones and eat them, or leach nutrients out of them some way to get actually the proportion of nutrients that we need. And that is what we would do in the wild. We would eat the entire animal in the wild. Someone said Steve Jobs only ate fruit for 2 years. He's dead now. That is the truth. Fasting makes the body get rid of the bad stuff in your body and leaves the good nutrients to let the good nutrients in your body function properly. Your view on that? Fasting is quite complicated. Its benefits are numerous, right? And a lot of them are immeasurable, actually. A lot of them are spiritual as well. And this matters because your mental does work with your body to create your actual wellness, your well-being. So fasting has remarkable benefits across the board. It's practiced by all the longest lived populations. So there's a lot to say on it, but also there's not that much to say on it, because if you just do it, it will aid in your healing and it will aid in your longevity. All the longest lived populations practice calorie restriction, usually not by choice, usually because they're poor. So calorie restriction is aided by fasting. What's up, everybody? Let some people come online here and we'll get some questions. I don't know, I think that beats too hard, truthfully, for that video. Yeah. Hey guys, anybody who has any questions here, go ahead and put them in. So the first question today was about water. It's extremely important to drink enough water. It's one of the easiest things to do. It's one of the things that most people don't do. Even people who are conscientious about it, they're really not strict about it, meaning, being prepared, bringing a shaker cup with you or something. You don't often want to just be drinking water. You could be putting something more beneficial in, even you could be putting vitamins and minerals in, you could be putting products in, you could be a protein shake, it could be something, but making sure that you're continuing to hydrate yourself. So the gallon a day
You know, that goes for just water, but water plus anything beneficial. If it's something like caffeine or alcohol, you know, now you need more water to compensate for that, more than the gallon that you already needed, half a gallon to a gallon depending on your weight, possibly even more depending on your weight. If you are overweight, drinking water is one of the things that can actually help you lose weight immediately, especially taking down your hunger. Often people are hungry, they think they're hungry, and they're really actually just thirsty. They're after water and salt. The body's craving water and salt at that time, and it's a mistake to go in and give it food at that time. Also, obviously, drinking carbonated drinks at all, it's going to increase your need for both those things drastically, both water and salt, heavily salted water to compensate for the carbonation. Anybody who's drinking carbonation with a meal, it's one of the worst things that you can do, both just for hydration's sake and for digestion's sake, because it neutralizes the stomach acid and you can't digest food properly. And I think it is kind of more important what else you're drinking other than just water. Like, if you are drinking only water all day, that's not enough. You need the supplement. You need to put the supplements in the water for the most part. And then if you're drinking some of these other things out there on the market, you know, again, especially coffee. I'm a coffee drinker, but you need to compensate for that, right? It does dehydrate you, it does increase your need for water and for salt specifically, and also a whole host of vitamins and minerals, especially vitamins. We wake up dehydrated, right? One of the best times to drink a ton of water is first thing in the morning. Supplementing first thing in the morning is excellent as well, even before coffee. A lot of people that I know who have done this, actually, who were used to waking up and drinking coffee first thing, and they switched to water with supplements in it or water with salt in it, they no longer wanted the coffee. It didn't happen in my case necessarily, but it's happened to quite a few people, and it can be very beneficial, especially a lot of us coffee drinkers. You know, now I can't drink that much because I'm actually absorbing it and utilizing it, and it's harmful at that point. Whereas I used to be able to drink 10, 20 cups a day, and there's a lot of people who are still, they're doing that, you know, and I was lucky I never put sugar and like milk or cream or anything in it. I just drink black coffee. Now I use butter in it. Excellent, by the way. But if you're putting sugar and cream in it, now it's bad for you, basically, and that dehydrates you even further. Using pink salt in my water, is that the best salt in your opinion? I like pink salt because it's super available nowadays, and it's cheaper than some of the other options like Celtic typically, and they all have the same basic spread. Like, they all have a spread of all the trace minerals and stuff like that, especially sea salt, right? All the minerals on the periodic table are in seawater, so that's concentrated in the salt, and it's also concentrated in the flesh of anything that grows in the sea. This is why kelp and seaweed and sea moss, these things are so beneficial. It's because they do have a spread of all these minerals. So do fish, ocean fish, to a degree, right? Every degree you go up the food chain, all the nutrients are concentrated by 10 times. It's called biomagnification, right? So if there's X amount of minerals just present in the seawater, there's X times 10 in the seaweed, and then there's times 10 in the fish that eat the seaweed, and then there's times 10 in the fish that eat the fish, right? And it's an exponential increase in the amount of these compounds that are in the flesh, right? And it was that first stage there, converting it into plant material, that made it bioavailable, right? The nutrients from salt aren't necessarily all bioavailable. They have their own function and their own role as salt, as electrolytes, and these are cofactor molecules for other reactions happening in the body, right? So that's why we need salt, and it's not good to think about salt with its mineral content as a benefit for getting minerals. It's for getting the electrolyte properties of it mostly. Someone said, how should we purify water? I mean, my preferred method at the moment is going to be reverse osmosis, because it's the most affordable and practical way to do it in a home. Distillation is probably the best, right? Because you're completely sure that it's got nothing in it, but then now you're left over with basically kind of dead water. So you've got to do something to remineralize it or to add motion or structure to it, right? This is why some of these machines can really go up in cost, because some of these processes can be quite complicated. So reverse osmosis, it is for me. It's anybody can really do it for relatively cheap and get it installed, or install it yourself. It's not that difficult. We have a filter at our house, you know, and if we go out, we take a container full of our own water. If you know how long you're going out, fill up another container, right? Because you really can't rely on the water supply out there. You know, even trying to buy water, a lot of times you go in and you can't find distilled in the store. What about trying to find water hole? Is it too dangerous?
most people, especially most people that would be listening to this, they're not going to be living in a place where a water hole is going to be accessible or desirable, right? If you're in a major city, you're not looking for a water hole, right? You're looking for purified water, basically. The next question was tanning beds. I don't believe that we should really be using tanning beds. I think maybe we could do it in a way that was beneficial to us and that was not harmful in the radiation and EMF that we're exposed to while in the tanning bed, right? And also they filter out the certain waves in the tanning beds, and I think we need all of them. I think we need the full spectrum that the sun has to offer, and the sun has a very special and particular benefit to us that I do not think can actually be replicated, you know, adequately. And people are like, well, it's winter. No, it's winter here too. I'm not out there getting sun too. And the next best thing that we can do actually to get vitamin D is to get it from food. It's one of the exceptions to the rule of supplementing that, you know, most of the nutrients are actually, they're better found in supplements. It's far more reliable than any other source, but vitamin D is best from the sun, and then the second best is for food, because we do have a hard time processing vitamin D as a supplement. So it's really our last resort, and in some cases it's our only resort. But the foods that would be highest in vitamin D, by the way, are organ meats, especially liver, and a lot of people don't eat that right. So it's much easier to supplement, especially if you're looking at this every day. Have a little piece of liver every day. And tanning beds, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe it's a good idea for us to have a vacation twice a winter. I've left the cold latitudes for a few winters, and it was very beneficial. I mean, you have sun year round, feel great. And these are goals in life too. A lot of people are like, I can't do that. We'll set the goals. And this is people asking how to really truly be healthy. And I think this 6 months of winter here, not really 6 months, probably 5 months, 5 full months where we're not in the sun. Up north we got 8 months, you know, we're not really in the sun. It can't truly be beneficial. You do need to actually get sun itself, real sun. You don't have to go that far south. You don't have to have an expensive vacation, but going somewhere where you can get sun is going to be one of the most beneficial things that people can do in their actual life. Like, I just went down to Arizona a little while ago, and even getting just a little bit of sun out there, you know, it's good. I haven't seen the sun in months up here. I mean, your skin hasn't seen the sun, right? It's a different thing from you're just walking around in your hands and a little bit of your face is getting it. You're not getting the full benefit of being out there in the sun. If you live in a big city, what are ways you can protect yourself from EMF? It's one of the toughest things to answer because it's a really tough situation. We've got a crazy amount of radiation out there with the cell phone towers and with high voltage power lines and Wi-Fi in every house, sometimes more than one Wi-Fi in every house. You know, a lot of houses are split up into apartments. It could be 4 or 5 Wi-Fi sources in a single house. You're in some of these cities, your phone's picking up dozens, if not 50 or more, you know, Wi-Fi signals. Everybody's got a phone. Their phone is not just radiating themselves. If they're keeping it in their pocket, it's affecting them. You can protect yourself marginally, but importantly, by taking the phone off of your body, right? The phone is going to be people's biggest source of radiation in their daily life. Holding it, never putting it to the head is a good idea. Like, these are, even if you have a cell phone tower 2 blocks away, if you're putting your phone to your head every day, that's going to be doing more damage to you, in my opinion. So you can use headphones. There's even EMF-free headphones, but any regular standard headphone that has a wire is going to be a lot less. The AirPods, you know, that's going to be one thing you want to avoid for sure, right? Your own Wi-Fi, you can cage your Wi-Fi with a Faraday cage, because it's probably going to be putting out a lot more output than it needs to. And I mean, teaching other people about this as well, we can all be conscientious about our devices. Like, I'm sitting here in front of this device, and then I have the iPad here. These are both radiating outwards, even with most of the buttons off, right? They're both on airplane mode. They both only have Wi-Fi on. There's no Bluetooth, and it's still crazy amount of radiation. And this is not even talking about the overall environment. We are in a city here, and this city, it does have a lot of cell phone towers. It does have a very high voltage power line range not that far from here. And it's imperative for us to know how serious this is and how big the difference is between here and in the country. I don't really think that we can function optimally in a city. The things that and this is the preface to saying what you actually can do it. Like, when you answer it on the story and you're like, yeah, with bracelets we get great results, I have 15 seconds to explain something, but the real situation is that
the radiation is one of the biggest problems for health, right? In the health industry in general, if you read old books, they used to get great results just off, you know, cod liver oil, just off doing some basic things. You could get, boom, phenomenal results. In our own industry, the supplement industry, it hasn't been around that long, but they used to get amazing results with certain things. And you can ask anybody in their own specific business if they've been doing it a long time, or practice if they've been doing it a long time, they will actually tell you that they used to get better results. And the food, sure, it's gotten worse, chemicals have gotten worse, right? The overall environment has gotten worse. There's less nutrients in the food supply, there's more drugs being prescribed, there's a whole bunch of things going on. And now everybody carries this in their pocket, right? Everybody carries the phone on them. Everybody's got signals going out. Everybody's got cell phone towers connected to, right? Every city's wired up. Every city's getting progressively more wired up with more and more transmitters and more cell phones and stronger ranges and all this kind of stuff. Being aware of this is like, well, do I even want to be in a city? And it's a very strange conversation to have, because it actually is a political thing that we do need to take care of, because, you know, we're selling supplements here. The supplements don't get absorbed if the blood is all screwed up, if the blood vessels are all clumped together because of stress from radiation. If you have this thing in your pocket, you are having immense stress to your blood. It's going right to your blood, right? It's affecting the blood, and the blood is what carries nutrients around. The blood is what carries oxygen around. So if this process is compromised, I mean, this is your life force, right? The blood is the life. The body puts more effort into maintaining the health of the blood than it does any other system, right? There's a hierarchy of systems that your body will put resources to, all the resources that it has, and the blood is the first one, right? The body will take nutrients and resources away from other places in the body to make sure that the blood is okay. That's why we get so many people coming to us saying, I have all these problems, but my doctor said that I was fine, right? The doctor said, this is how doctors would say it though. They say, well, according to your blood work, we can't really see anything wrong with you. So most of the time they suggest just seeing what happens, and if it gets worse, come back, or they could offer some drug, but if they don't even know what category the problem is in, then they won't, you know. And we get a ton of people coming with these mysterious problems that of course stem just from the basic underfunctioning of the body due to bad digestion, bad food, or not the correct foods. Even if they're eating correctly, you could be eating organic whole wheat, it could be killing you and stopping you from absorbing certain nutrients, and you're going to have symptoms show up all throughout your body. And this is why often things go undiagnosed, or they kind of just push you towards a diagnosis, you know, because you show some of the symptoms of that problem. By the way, I didn't even answer what to actually do about the radiation. Obviously, we do recommend the frequency tuning disc on the bracelets is the best way to do it. I have another pendant that I'm wearing under here that it has a strong effect, and a lot of people will, you know, turn off from that and be like, that sounds crazy, but there is devices that can help. There's devices that you can put on your phone. This is money being spent to protect yourself at the basic level, but being in the city, you are going to be constantly exposed no matter what, right? If you work in a building, you're going to be exposed, you know, to different sources, fluorescent lights, all these kind of things. They do affect us. I think they affect us on more and more of a level as well, as our basic health gets lower, right? As our basic immunity gets lower, as illnesses rise, as prescriptions rise, you know, people are having, now your body is not strong enough to even defend against the radiation stress, right? Your body does have its own resonance as well. And when your energy is coherent, then you can actually protect yourself to a degree from the radiation. But living in a high radiation zone, I mean, or working in a high radiation zone, it's very difficult to overcome this, other than understand that we actually have to do something about this in our environment. Like, this is not a solution that we can buy out of, right? People come and they say, well, what do you do about this health problem? Okay, well, it's easy. You stop eating these foods, and then you want to eat these foods specifically, and then you want to supplement, right? And then you want to boost this, and that's an easy protocol. But how do we protect ourselves in a city? It's very difficult, because it's not something that we can directly control ourselves. You can buy supplements and do that. You can choose what to eat and what not to eat, but you can't necessarily choose the radiation that your neighbor puts out, right? You can't necessarily choose what voltage the power lines in front of your house are running at. this is something that's beyond us and that we need to work on. Could you please share advices on treating adult acne, cystic hormonal back acne? Can reoccurring throat infections, tonsillitis be related to adult acne? Well, acne in any person, baby, lots of babies being born with you know, eczema, right, dermatitis, acne even. But acne is more of a blood thing. So back up, it's usually digestion started in any age. Bad foods, especially the glutens, inflaming the intestines. Could be dairy, could be Doritos, could be any of the thing out there really, but the intestines getting inflamed, and then since they're inflamed, now the surface area is reduced, so there's less room for them to absorb nutrients, especially the big molecules, the fats, the fat soluble vitamins, the vitamins. These are compounds and the minerals are not, right? The minerals are absorbed differently. So often, this is why we got great results, you know, from just mineral supplementation, especially strong plant-derived minerals like Dr. Wallach kind of invented, that can actually be absorbed right in the mouth. If you've never had them before, chances are they'll almost burn your mouth if you take them at the regular strength, the regular dilution. If you don't dilute it, it can actually almost burn your mouth, and that's it absorbing right into the mouth. But all these other nutrients need to be absorbed in the intestine. They need to be primed by a strong stomach acid. First major step that you can control by your salt intake. If you have enough salt, you'll have strong enough stomach acid. Presuming also that you don't have a major calcium mineral deficiency that could be preventing the cells from actually being able to get the stomach acid into the stomach correctly. So that's fixed with calcium, right? Salt and calcium, and you need salt for the strong stomach acid to absorb minerals like calcium, magnesium, and many of the other ones, and vitamins as well. The stomach needs to be strong for the actual priming of this system to go into the intestine. The intestine needs to be working correctly, which is the liver and the gallbladder. This itself needs minerals. Those minerals needed to be absorbed in the strong stomach acid. So this is where we're getting to acne, because this is how it happens. This is how the deficiency happens, because now good fats can't be absorbed in an inflamed intestine if that is the case, or they can't be absorbed if they're not broken down correctly in the stomach, and they go into the intestine undigested, right? The stomach acid is supposed to break down these proteins and fats so that they can be absorbed in the intestine. And all this other stuff that could be going wrong, it's not as common. It's just the stomach acid first. Bad foods and bad stomach acid. And this is the whole dirty blood, this is the whole sticky blood, this could be leaky gut as well, right? If the intestines are inflamed, and there's holes forming in the intestine wall, and food is going through those holes instead of going through the villi that are inflamed, which are the organs that are supposed to absorb these nutrients. That's why they're there. If that's happening, you're getting leaky gut, stuff's going into the blood. Remember the blood, how important the blood is. Stuff's going into the blood undigested. It's supposed to get in there in a form where they can just take it to the cells and give the cells what they need. The cells need the individual amino acids, right? The cells need the individual essential fatty acids. The cells need the individual minerals and possibly the individual vitamins as cofactors in this process, right? So this all works together, right? Talk about 90 essential nutrients, they all work together. Well, they all work together in this process as well. And it starts with the salt, because the sodium and the chloride are both essential minerals. And I would argue they're the two most important of the essential minerals, because without that stomach acid, you can't digest food and you can't absorb the other nutrients that you need to do all this. And if your digestion is not working correctly, and that has something to do with not enough stomach acid's made of the salt, right? Made of the chloride and the salt, partially, among the other gastric juices. And that's how you digest these good fats and these other things that you need for healthy skin. And if you do have dirty blood, proteins getting into the blood undigested, fats getting into the blood undigested, or whatever, food material getting into the blood undigested, you're going to be having dirty blood. And this is going to cause a circulation problem itself, and this is what it is. These are toxic deposits essentially from this dirty blood. The blood's trying to get rid of it, it's going into the skin. And so need to avoid the bad foods, need to have enough stomach acid. You could possibly use digestive enzymes, especially those containing ox bile and betaine hydrochloride or something. We do sell them, you can DM us about it, but you might get a better deal on another market. there is other products that you can go and you can just go to the health food store and you can buy one that has ox bile in it and digestive enzymes in it, a spread of them. And one with betaine hydrochloride in it on top of that could be extremely beneficial, because if you get your stomach acid working correctly and you get your digestion working correctly, your body is going to benefit massively just from that, right? And you could do other things. You could increase your circulation with lymphatic exercises, and you can look that up on Google. It'll give you a whole list of things that you can do. My favorite are home machines, because you don't have to go out, you know, looking for, you don't have to commute to it, you don't have to create any excuses for it. It's right there in the house. And this could be a shaker machine. Those can be a little bit costly, but they can range from a few $100 to like $1,200, $2,200 even, as they'll have different functions, and it does matter, and they do work very, very well, and it is worth the money for anybody dealing with a serious circulation problem, right? And acne is going to have something to do with circulation, so, and just exercise itself might not necessarily help, right? It will help the blood circulate, it'll help the body kind of circulate, but not the lymphatic system specifically in most cases. And lymphatic massages are quite expensive, right? So investing in a shaker machine, investing in a chi machine, even using something like a Dr. Ho machine, I do believe can help a lot. There are testimonials with acne associated with all of these, even though that's not what they're really meant for, right? We just want to move the lymphatic system around. You could use a swing set too. You could use a trampoline, even if you're on a boat long enough, you know, getting thrown around. It's the whooshing feeling going down a roller coaster or a strong hill. Even, I mean, it's a light lymphatic exercise essentially. And this all has to do with acne. I'm going into more detail than is necessary really, because often just quitting gluten and dairy and whatever, people lose their acne. Sometimes just supplementing with omega-3 essential fatty acid and zinc and even just a few things from the grocery store, you can get results with acne. And it's because these things are involved in the skin and all soft tissues, and usually people who come with acne have a list of other problems. It's rarely just acne. And a lot of times you can get somebody on a nutritional program and all those other problems will be helped except their acne, right? Especially if it's on the back, especially if it's cystic, especially if it's hormonal, like this person was asking, right? Hormonal back acne. Go into that part of it. The hormones are made of these good fats, especially cholesterol. So it just goes right back to a digestive problem probably being at the root of this, because cholesterol is the master steroid in the body, and all of the hormones, all the sex hormones specifically, the most important hormones, are made of cholesterol. 75, 65, 85, 95% cholesterol in most hormone cases. So that is the root of it. Fix the digestion, supplement with all the 90 essential nutrients. First thing I would increase would be omega-3 essential fatty acid and zinc. Then I'd go on to selenium and some of the other more important ones as well. What causes night sweats? Night sweats is a sign of a blood sugar problem. You don't have to be diabetic to have a blood sugar problem. You don't have to have a chronic blood sugar problem to have a blood sugar problem in one moment. You could be healthy most of the time. I'm healthy most of the time if I eat a bunch of sugar and even a bunch of dates before bed. I'm liable to sweat, right? And it's because maybe I didn't have enough of the specific nutrients that I would need to control my blood sugar at that time, but more likely I gave myself a sugar overload. It's harder to do with dates, it's harder to do with figs, it's harder to do with fruits, but it's very easy to do with chocolate. I react horribly to chocolate. And by the way, acne, one of the biggest factors involved is going to be blood sugar as well, right? The digestive problem leads directly to the blood sugar problem in most cases. Most cases it goes hand in hand, right? What are the things that screw up the intestine the most? They're the things, you know, that are made basically of sugar, processed carbs, and sugar itself. Sugar itself is more of a poison than a damaging, inflaming agent like the glutens in the heavy carb foods. Those foods will be contributing most heavily to the blood sugar problem. We consume far too much sugar, not just in its raw form, you know, but in all these product foods and all these packaged foods, and especially in breads and the processed carbs of any kind is going to contain sugar. Most foods that you are buying are containing sugar unless you're buying raw ingredients and cooking them, which is what we try to do, so we don't have to add sugar to anything. But you got to be creative, get your way around it. You know, we made some sugar-free cookies yesterday. They were not really that great. So what causes night sweats specifically at the root level? There's going to be a mineral deficiency as well. But what I'm saying here also is that even on a basic level of chromium in a supplement package, like without going to a blood sugar support product, the basic amount of the two major minerals and their cofactors, there's 23 of them at least, that are involved in the blood sugar mechanism in the body, like the textbook diabetes in an animal as a mineral deficiency, that exists. But if you're eating too much sugar, even a basic level of that good stuff, right, can't compensate for that much sugar, right? You would need to take way too much of the essential minerals that are necessary for the healthy blood sugar if you're eating too much sugar, right? So it goes hand in hand. Too much sugar, not enough of the nutrients that you need to process sugar properly, essentially, and that causes night sweats. And especially eating before bed can be one of the ways to throw it off. Even if you're fine the rest of the day, eat before bed and you could be sweating at night. Coffee can throw this off as well, because coffee depletes you of minerals, right? So if you're a big coffee drinker and not a big water drinker and not a supplementer, and you're not using enough salt, now you're dehydrating yourself chronically, and that's going to be contributing as well to blood sugar difficulties. And by the way, night sweats often go with teeth grinding as well. Teeth grinding is the same thing. It's a sign of a blood sugar problem. Can you please explain about whey protein, please? Okay, well, protein is based on the scale is based on the egg. The egg protein is rated at 100. Whey protein, I believe, comes in at 140. So it can be a very valuable protein if your body doesn't have a problem with it. And there are many people who do have a problem with whey. They have a problem digesting whey. They get a reaction from whey, especially an acne reaction. It's the most common one that I've seen with it. It's rare, but I do believe that most of these food sensitivities and intolerances and even allergies are getting more common. We do ask people, everybody who comes to us, one of our questions is, do you have any sensitivities? And people often do come in with a list of them, right? And whey could be one of them. And that could be one that you don't even actually know, because it does show up in several things, and you could think it's another food, but it's the protein. It can be great, it can be beneficial. A lot of people are more focused on protein than they are on the other nutrients, especially the nutrients needed to process protein, especially the vitamins and all that. This is why we don't sell any protein powders that don't have a whole range of other nutrients in them, even though we advise people to actually go out and get hemp protein, for instance, you know, if they're just gonna if they want something for protein. That's why I recommend hemp above whey is because I've never seen anybody come in and get a reaction from hemp protein, right? And it seems to be a very valuable protein itself, and it's very cost effective. It doesn't cost as much as a lot of the other proteins. Whey's usually a pretty good deal as well. So it's up to you. I don't generally actually recommend protein supplements because I don't feel that protein deficiency is most people's problem, right? In some cases it could be, especially some old people, right? They come in there and they have a lot of problems, they're on drugs, and they're withered. Often they're not eating that much food. Often these old people, geriatrics, before they die, the last few years before they die, they're not eating that much food, and so protein shakes can be a very, very good way of getting a lot of nutrition into them, so their body's starving for it, you know. But most people, they don't, in my opinion, they don't really need a protein shake. I have protein shakes here, and they last such a long time because we don't feel the craving to use them every day, and we don't really eat that much food either, right? It's the nutrients that your body is craving. Started at the beginning of this video with just water and salt are usually the first two things that your body is craving more than anything else, so more than any food. So you think you have a chip, you know, craving, you really have a water and salt craving, and water and salt can knock out that craving. And it's the same with the other nutrients. If you're taking all the nutrients, you're taking a bunch of supplements, now you don't actually need that much food because your body is asking you for food so it can pull the nutrients out of the food. But the digestion itself costs energy. The digestion itself costs nutrients, right? Your body has to invest in digesting to pull those nutrients out. So if you just give the nutrients to the body directly, and you give your body a little bit of what it needs in terms of the major nutrients, macronutrients. We're talking about micronutrients when we're talking about minerals, vitamins, amino acids. Essential fatty acids are on the borderline between micro and macro, both because it's a big molecule and because you need a ton of it. You need a whole bunch of omega-3, for instance, compared to the weight of a trace mineral, right? You need hardly any of a trace mineral. These are just there for reactions and stuff like that. And the omega-3 is you're building tissue with that. So this started with protein, but we got into some other things here. What do you think about slight acne on the back of the head? Acne anywhere, it's going to be that same old digestive problem, blood sugar problem. It could show up anywhere. It depends on its severity. And guys, most deficiencies can range. Like, you could have a bone problem or a muscle problem. It's the same deficiency kind of thing, right? You could be overweight or underweight. It's the same basic problem. The gluten intolerance can make you gain weight or lose weight, right? Or unable to gain weight, sorry. You would lose weight to get to that point, but you could be skinny to begin with. Doctors in India are saying no to whey protein. It's probably because they're seeing reactions to it in their demographics, and I wouldn't blame them. I don't recommend whey as my first go-to at all. They said, I am a vegetarian, what can I take instead? If you're a vegetarian, you should go for hemp, but you should probably go for hemp anyways because it's great value. 14-year-old boy with acne isn't normal sign of puberty. No, it's a sign that the body doesn't have enough of what it needs. It's more likely to get things show up in puberty, like to be diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic or type 1 diabetic even. I would agree with that diagnosis because we believe type 1 is a birth defect, and if it's anything else, if it's an organ failure later, if it's just a rampant blood sugar problem later, it's type 2, and that's a nutrient problem. It's a mineral deficiency specifically with its cofactors, and it's a digestive problem, more likely in a sugar overload. More likely, it's the same thing with the acne on a 14-year-old boy. If the 14-year-old boy has correct digestion and they take more nutrients for their body weight than they would need to if they were an adult, because the adult is maintaining and the 14-year-old boy is growing. So that body needs a little bit more than the adult per pound. That needs to be taken into consideration. If they're getting everything that they need per pound, there won't be acne. If they're doing all this other stuff correctly. You could knock any one of these pillars out and the whole thing falls down, right? If you're never moving, you're sitting there playing video games all the time, you're giving yourself a circulation problem and a lymphatic problem. It doesn't matter if you eat all the right things and take the right amount of salt and take the right amount of nutrients, you're still going to actually develop problems. So it might look like a cyst, it might look like a pimple, it might look like a rash, it might look like, right? I don't know, but you have to take all the things into consideration, take all the good stuff, avoid all the bad stuff, and you do have to circulate the lymphatic system. How long do you recommend taking probiotics for digestive health? Well, if you have a health problem, it is always a good idea to boost your probiotics. We have probiotics in our daily regimen and in our recommended products. They're in the products because it's a very good idea to boost it every day. If you have a problem, a digestive problem right now, it's a very good idea to boost it even more. Now, I used to say, and I was trained to say, 30 billion active cultures is what somebody should be looking for in a good product. But I now know that there are better ways of delivering probiotics to the body, that you don't need 30 billion, right? Wallach came up with a way to crystallize, sort of like one of our other products. It's kind of a revolutionary process actually to crystallize the probiotics, so micro encapsulate them so that they actually make it to the colon much more reliably. The only reason that people recommend taking 30, 80 billion active cultures is because they're expecting most of them to die on their way to the colon. But if you have a more reliable way of delivering them to the colon, then it's much better. So you don't need that much. You don't even need 5 billion. I would say 1 to 5 billion is a great basis if they're microencapsulated. Now, do you need probiotics every day strictly? There's good evidence to suggest actually yes, that if we're not eating anything fermented every day, then we should be supplementing with probiotics every day, because it does seem to be a really critical thing both for health in the short term and health in the long term. So if you have a digestive problem, you need a ton of good bacteria to regain that. Now, remember, they're regenerating themselves. These colonies are regenerating themselves, but every extra stress that we put on the body, especially with food, it's throwing off the chances of those good bacteria thriving, because all of the bad foods, especially the heavy carbs, especially the sugars, are feeding the bad bacteria that compete. They compete out the good bacteria or something like that. So you should take probiotics. You should talk to us about that. You could DM us about that, because it is very important. And it's one of those things you could be taking every nutrient. You know, if you weren't taking them with probiotics, that's why they put probiotics in our products, by the way. That if you're not taking probiotics and you have a poor digestion at any level of the digestion, the stomach, the intestine, or the colon, right, or any of the other things involved with the good bacteria, and you could still be having a health problem, especially one like acne. These good bacteria has a lot to do with blood sugar as well. I just heard eggshells are good for calcium. Eggshells are okay for calcium. You can dissolve them, especially in apple cider vinegar, and consume them that way, because it's not very nice to do it any other way unless you ground it into a real fine powder. We give it to dogs, right? When we recommend, someone comes in with a dog with a health problem, usually, first of all, we assume that they've been feeding it table scraps, which throws off the nutrient balance that it already had in the dog food. The dog food delivered the dog the amount of nutrients that it needs for the amount of protein and fat and whatever else is in it, so that it can be balanced, right? The dog is expected not to get food from anywhere else. So I'm just saying this, we recommend that they give whole eggs to dogs on top of just dog food and no table scraps, you know, and the dog will eat the eggshells, but it's not very good for us. I mean, it's not very convenient for us to actually eat it. You don't need them for calcium. It's much easier to supplement, you know, with calcium and get your adequate amount. You'd have to eat a ton of eggshells to really get what you need. And by the way, the major way that we would be getting our calcium in the wild, in the long-lived populations out there in the wild, is two places. Number one is the use of wood ash, right, for their general plant-derived minerals. The plant sucks up the minerals out of the ground. We burn the minerals are left over, and they're plant-derived minerals already, because the plant already converted them from elements into colloidal minerals through the plant magic process. When you burn away the carbon, you're left with just the plant-derived minerals, right? So calcium is going to be one of those minerals, especially if they're using anything that was grown on limestone, right, or anything where there's a lot of calcium in the soil. They'll be sucking that up. And also, bones and bone meal, bone soup. This is the next most biggest source of calcium that we would be getting. We wouldn't be doing it through eggshells. We'd have to be eating, I couldn't even estimate how many eggshells that you would need to eat to get your full calcium, and then it's not going to have all the other nutrients that you need to balance calcium. It's much better to get calcium from bones or supplements in our case. Someone says, I'm taking tons of longevity products. I'm still taking sea moss from another company. Is sea moss safe? Sea moss itself is safe. I don't know about anything else in any other product, right, from a company or something like that. But sea moss is most definitely safe and most definitely beneficial, in addition to any supplement regime, right? It's always beneficial to consume sea greens themselves, because they do concentrate all those base nutrients, and a lot of them have some awesome magic powers with their antioxidants, right? One of them, fucoidan, which we do have a couple of products that contain fucoidan. It seems to be just one of the most miraculous antioxidant and antioxidant-like combination that does wonders for people with serious problems. We're talking about cancer and autoimmunity and this type of thing. You know, we do recommend that they actually take that product. It would be great for them to have sea moss as well, but again, we can do a bit better than nature in some ways. Not necessarily better, but easier, right? Remember, the longest lived populations, they get all their nutrients because it's their lifestyle. They don't even know why, right? It's the burning of the wood, it's the saving of the bones, it's, you know, all the little things that adds up to them getting all their nutrients. And for us, it's just definitely more convenient to use products in most cases, because even though sea moss is great, you still have to eat quite a lot of it to get the benefit. This is why places like Okinawa, by the way, which, you know, the longest lived populations live all over the place. They live on mountains, you know, they live in jungles, you know, they can live in Okinawa as well in certain places. And one of the things that they do is they don't burn trees, because it's an island that most islands have been deforested and reforested and deforested, and they manage their trees rather than, if they know that they're living off of wood, then they're gonna need a lot more trees. This is like, you know, England stripped its whole island of trees and then needed to buy trees from other countries or steal them or whatever. They needed to get trees. Okinawans can't do that. They don't have the mechanisms for that, so they burn seaweed, they burn sea moss, and when you burn it, you concentrate it down, because you're burning away the carbon and you're burning away the need to digest anything, right? All you're left with is the plant-derived minerals, and that's how they heat their homes, and that's how they cook their food, is by burning seaweed and sea moss, drying it out, burning it. And so when people say, yeah, I take sea moss and whatever, it's just not concentrated enough, right? The people who use sea moss, it's not because they eat sea moss. They do eat a bit of sea moss, but it's because they burn it and they have those ashes, and they put the ashes in the garden, and they grow the food that they actually eat, the bulk of the vegetables, in the mineral-rich soil. Mineral-enriched because of the wood ashes. Someone said, how do you circulate your lymphatic system? I believe I answered that earlier. Mixed connective tissue disease. We need a ton of connective tissue and to thrive. I mean, most of our body is made of connective tissue and muscle tissue, right? And connective tissue holds muscle tissue together among the million other things that it does in the body. And we're supposed to be consuming this basically every day for our entire lives. So if you're coming to, you know, the realization that you need this stuff now, and you're 20 years old or 30 years old or 50 years old, you're way behind. You can't drink enough bone soup, you know, to make up for it in most cases. And by the way, bone soup itself has phenomenal testimonials, right? People are like, oh my God, I feel so good everywhere, and in my joints and the teeth, bones, I mean, skin, like people can get all kinds of results just from bone soup. But the reality is we need actually so much more to make up for the deficiencies that we've already had of this stuff, because there is nowhere near enough connective tissue in any of the diets that are available to us, or any of the foods that are available to us on our markets for the most part. If you were drinking bone soup every day your whole life, I mean, you can actually look at somebody and see and ask a big bone, big person. We know some big people up here. Ask them what they were raised on, right? They'll probably tell you soup was one of them. Seriously, and it probably had bones in it, and that was one of the key components. And so now actually it's more efficient to really dramatically boost that with supplementing with the base components of the connective tissue rather than the connective tissue itself, because you need to eat just, again, so much of it to get what you actually need to make up for the long-term deficiency. And it's actually cheaper to supplement with it as well. And again, it's easier. You don't have to have a soup going all the time, and you don't have to have that type of kitchen running if that's not your lifestyle, right? So the connective tissue supplements are key, but also, again, the digestion. You need to have strong stomach acid. You need to avoid the bad foods. You need to take the 90 essential nutrients anyways, especially, and this is, by the way, the reason why there's such mixed reviews, not on just bone soup, but on like people who are like, no, I did it for 90 days and I don't feel great on bone soup. And same thing with glucosamine sulfate, or chondroitin, or MSM, or any of the other things that are marketed as helping the joints, or, you know, the cartilage or the connective tissue, or any of these products. You get mixed reviews because people don't have the same amount of nutrients in their body to process these things. So if you take all the nutrients, now your body can actually process the connective tissue and get it where it needs to go. And this whole thing, again, it works together. We need a ton of connective tissue, so it's boosting it for the connective tissue disease would be one of the first things I would do. It also boosts the soft tissues and boosts the vitamin C and boosts the selenium, by the way, because selenium and copper together are affected by how much vitamin C you have. So actually, if you take a ton of vitamin C, you're increasing your need for those minerals, and those two are very, very, very important minerals. There's a lot of people who say just take a ton of vitamin C, and that's good. You should take a lot of vitamin C, but it has to be mentioned that you have to take increased copper as well. And if you're taking increased copper, you definitely want increased selenium as well. My son just turned 1 and he isn't eating solids because when he does, he throws up 3 hours later. Is that digestion issues? Yes, that would be a digestive issue. My first culprit would be something like, I don't know what solids means. If it's gluten or if it's dairy, I would say that's probably the immediate culprit. It could be a lack of salt as well. If you're feeding this child food that doesn't have salt on it, then they're not going to be able to digest it properly. And a baby has a far less robust and developed system than an adult, right? Adults can get used to eating all kinds of stuff. A baby's going to be much more sensitive to it, especially if it has a gluten intolerance. And if the mother has any gluten intolerance, the child's probably going to have a gluten intolerance that's worse because the mother was unsupplemented most likely throughout her pregnancy. And especially, remember, the birth defects happen. All these problems usually that the children are born with happen within the first window of pregnancy, before they usually even actually know that they're pregnant. It happens within, you know, the first days, first weeks. The digestive system has a lot to do also with probiotics, right? Good bacteria. So if the child was C-sectioned, then that means they missed their exposure to the first batch of bacteria through the birth canal, right? That's when it would first be exposed to that bacteria, and that's actually the kind of the foundation of their digestive system and their immune system. So if they're not eating correctly, that could have something to do with it. You could feed the child probiotics. We have a product formulated for children. Babies can do it as well because it's just a powder that goes in the mouth. I would go there and I would DM us and ask us about that. Thanks for all the great info, Ryan. I've got to get on the DM with you soon and talk serious about better health. You should do that. Is there a natural way without surgery to get rid of lipoma? Anytime anybody comes in with anything that's like, I need surgery right now, unless your appendix has burst and you have an infection, okay, you gotta get it out. If you come in with a blood problem, a crazy blood problem, you come in with a crazy cancer, an autoimmune, you come in with a kidney, they're like, they wanna take my kidney, they wanna take my gallbladder, and if they wanna take your appendix and it hasn't burst, anything, we're talking about any surgery, root canal, before they do that, before you make the decision to do that, because is it really a rush? I don't know. It is if your appendix is burst and some other rare cases. But if you do not need surgery right now, the best course of action is number one, stop eating food right now and do a fast right now. Say it would be the same with an appendix too. Before it had burst, like if they said they want to take my appendix, first step, don't eat right now. Start fasting right now. Don't drink any carbonated drinks. Right? Don't drink any alcohol. Don't drink any coffee or tea. Drink water. Put a little bit of salt in it. If you have the resources right now, buy supplements right now. Start putting them into the body right now. Right? At strong doses right now. Would never eat the bad foods again. Right? This is any serious problem. This is something anybody should do. But if someone's considering surgery, we say give us 90 days before considering most surgeries for anything. Right? This a stent in the heart, a knee replacement, anything, a root canal, anything. We'd say give us 90 days. And some conditions you can't wait 90 days, right? So we would say give us any days, right? And one of the things that I would do too, by the way, is I would add some of the stronger enforcements like colloidal silver, and actually you could go a step beyond colloidal silver to a product called Argintin 23, and you can DM us about that. Argintin 23 is a step above colloidal silver. Colloidal silver is already one of the most fantastic and one of the most effective compounds that we could add to a supplement regime, even be taken on its own. There's phenomenal, ridiculous results with it, both topically and internally, for such a huge range of problems. And if we have one now that's a step above that, then that is the one that I would go to if somebody's considering surgery or anybody has any serious crazy problem. We would go there. You could boost antioxidants as well. You could boost specific nutrients as well. You could take all types of herbal remedies as well. And we usually would, again, if someone comes in and says, okay, I'm super serious, I want to do everything that I possibly can because I was just given 2 weeks to live. Some people come to us and they're like, I'm just given a week to live and 6 months to live and serious. And now what do? Everything, right? You do everything. Make sure you're drinking enough water. You fully block out your life and figure out where everything needs to go, and you do it. And I would not get any surgery that you do not need to get. Then you don't know if you need to get it or not. If you haven't given your body every possible chance it can have to get what it needs and use it properly. And the amount of time window usually for recovery, doing things properly, is 90 days. And if you're on your deathbed, we just, still say give you 90 days. You'll probably live a lot longer. Yes, it was the probiotic digestive question. The mixed connective tissue diseases, lupus, Crohn's, and Raynaud's. Lupus is most likely caused by a digestive problem specifically. Again, eating the glutens, damaging the intestines, all the deficiencies that result from this process. By the way, the bread and stuff and the gluten doesn't just damage the intestine. It also sits in the stomach like a sponge, and it absorbs more. It takes a lot of stomach acid to try and break down these proteins and these compounds. And when it gets into the intestine, then it does another set of damage. So it's just one of the things that can be involved here, right? Because we're talking about lupus. This is a so-called autoimmune disease, which we don't agree with, and this is going to be based in digestion. The cause is based in the digestion. So it's the same problem, same thing. We would get off all the bad foods, take all the nutrients, right? Because these other problems are going to have more to do with mineral deficiencies, and that's it. make sure you're consuming, we would recommend consuming a lot of cholesterol, by the way, in all of these things, because cholesterol is really going to aid in the healing process, making sure you're getting it from a good source, especially if you're in America. Eggs are going to be your best source, right? Making sure they're good eggs though, you know. That goes for the 90-day thing too. Bone soup too, by the way, I would add bone soup. Someone said, what's an alternative to bone soup for vegetarians? Well, vegetarians, and as opposed to vegans, vegetarians can choose based on their own values and opinions about which specific animal products they do want to consume. Right now, meat is oddly not that valuable. People think of animal products as meat. Meat is not that valuable compared to eggs, right? Compared to bones, compared to bone marrow, compared to the other nutrients that are leached out into bone soup. Bone soup is one of the most phenomenal things that you can actually consume, and anybody with any of these other health problems too, that would be included in their ultimate regimen. If they said, what's everything that I could do, we would say consume bone soup every day as well. So the alternative, there really is no alternative. Aloe vera would be the closest alternative that does exist, both in its semi-connective tissue-like properties, right? It's sort of a connective tissue analog, but not really. It doesn't go all the way, but it does have incredible benefits on its own, especially for gut healing too as well. We were talking about lupus there. Anybody with any of these skin problems, acne we were talking about earlier, cystic acne, hormonal problems, adding aloe vera, and in a aloe vera paste or juice or wherever you do get it, we do have product with it as well. It does help soothe the digestive system a lot, and soothe is a strange word because it's a healing process that aloe vera does seem to stimulate quite well. It's a very miraculous healing plant. So for like a vegan, the strict vegan, we would still say you do want to supplement with the base components of connective tissue, and if they're opposed to it based on the gelatin capsule or based on the fact that it ultimately did come from bone or marrow, then you know we can't really help them other than say, well, go to aloe vera. But I'm saying that as a second place, it's not a very close race, right? The difference between bones and bone soup, there's a ridiculous, massive difference between that and aloe vera. Even though this is great, you should do both, truthfully, in my opinion. Okay, there's 2 minutes left here. I'm gonna run through this. Can you save this live? Yes. What's your thought on CBD and the body? CBD is with the latest of many plant compounds that have been known to help tons of people, right? As a medicine. It's a medicinal action of it. It's not a nutritional action of it. So most of the things that people are actually going to the herb or the drug or the whatever, and this is acting like a drug in this case, they're not fixing the root of the problem. The problem was probably a nutritional problem. The problem was probably a mineral deficiency or vitamin deficiency or a digestive problem or something that the CBD does not actually fix. So you're paying for something that's not actually fixing the problem. This is how drugs operate. They manage the problem rather than fix it. If you're on CBD to mask the pain, you're not going to be addressing the actual pain. If you're on CBD to stop seizures, you're not stopping the thing that's causing the body to have seizures in the first place. Right, so this is just a super important part, and this will be the last question that I'll answer. If you're just taking a medicine, you're not actually ever going to fix the problem at its root. You have to correct the food, you have to correct the digestion, you have to correct the nutrient intake to actually, you know, do the work of repairing the body. And other than that, CBD can be great to manage a problem in the very short term, but it should be coupled with a nutritional program that makes sure that they're actually fixing the problem. And then one day you won't need the medicine anymore, right? And that's the same with many other compounds and drugs as well. Guys, it's kicking me off here. I'm out of time. Much love and respect. We'll talk to you next time. What's up, everybody? We've got about 20 minutes here. Thought I'd jump on and answer some questions. We've got some questions lined up here. First question is, would fresh running water from an aquifer be better than distilled water in a plastic container at a store? My opinion is definitely. Even though the distilled water is more guaranteed to be completely clean, it's still kind of dead water. I don't presume it has much energy in it. It's been sitting in a bottle, you know, stagnant. It doesn't have minerals in it of any kind. So obviously, always when you're using distilled water, we want you to add salt to it, but if you can get running water from an aquifer and you know that it doesn't have any pollutants in it or anything, and it's going to be probably your best bet across the board, I would still add other things to it like salt. The second question is, what can you do if you have type 1 diabetes? If you have type 1 diabetes, you have an inborn error of metabolism, which is another way of saying a birth defect, and all birth defects are preventable using proper nutrition. It's either a nutritional problem or a toxicity problem or a pollutant problem or something, but either way, the body of the mother, is unable to deliver what the baby, the growing baby, needs. And that's one of these things. Type 1 diabetes, sickle cell anemia is also another inborn error of metabolism where the body is unable to produce an enzyme or something for a specific reaction, and you end up being unable to produce or utilize insulin, for example. Now what you can do is you can support your body to the utmost, right? It doesn't matter who you are or what you have. If you have your gallbladder taken out, it's going to decrease your maximum genetic capacity, to do well and live long, but you can still do better now, right? Everybody can still correct their digestion. Everybody can still give the body the nutrients that it needs to function. Otherwise, even if it can't produce that, even if you need to stay on insulin for the rest of your life, you can bring all your other markers of health and wellness and well-being up, right? By all these things that we talk about. So there is no cure for type 1 diabetes other than preventing the birth defect from happening via nutrition in the mother and making sure the mother is not getting anything that could impact her body's nutritional metabolism. How can people be healthy without supplements? It's a good question. The first thing would be to move. You probably would have to move. If you're holding a phone here, you're in the modern world, you don't have access to all the nutrients, especially all the minerals in your environment, so you would have to move somewhere where there is all the minerals. You could do this from the sea, potentially. Again, I wouldn't want to be around a metropolitan doing this, but you could get your nutrients from seaweed, for instance, and what you would need to do is take that seaweed and not consume it. You need to dry it out and then burn it all day, every day for your cooking and your heating on a wood stove, and you'd be putting seaweed in it, and what's left over when you burn away the carbon is the plant-derived minerals. The seaweed took the minerals out of the seawater. All the minerals are in seawater in trace amounts. It's concentrated up each level in the food chain, but if you do take seaweed and you are consuming products from the sea and you burn them and concentrate them down, consume those wood ashes directly and put those wood ashes in your garden, which you then grow the rest of the things that you do eat. Your squash, your potato, your turnips, your celery, your carrots, whatever it is that you're growing it in the garden that you threw the wood ashes in that came from the sea moss or the kelp or whatever from the sea, concentrating those minerals. That's one way to do it. You can move to some other locations in the world. They're not really that fancy. You would have to completely change your lifestyle. And remember also, all of us that are here, we're behind, right? However old you are, if you're 18 years old or if you're 40 years old, you're 18, 30, 40 years behind on these nutrients, right? The people who live the longest and who do this without supplements in the wild environment, they have been getting these nutrient sources, especially these mineral sources, for their whole lives. So we are far behind in that. We have to catch up not only on the minerals, and the vitamins are for the everyday reactions and transactions in the body, but your body's made of minerals, right? The minerals act both as cofactors for reactions and as building blocks to actually build tissues in your body. So if we're 18, 20, 30 years behind on that, your chances are already lowered of succeeding, especially if you have an existing health problem. So how to do it without supplements is not easy. These things are not in our environment. You could find other ways of doing it, but realistically, even what those long-lived people do, that is considered supplementing. They're supplementing with the wood ashes. They irrigate their fields as well, by the way. It's not just wood ashes. They irrigate their fields for whatever they're growing once a year, right? The flooding season brings in mud, silt, so that's minerals. It dries out, it's minerals. It's still left in the soil. The plant sucks those up, they eat them. Next thing they do is bones. When they consume an animal, they eat the whole animal, right? They eat the bones, they eat the organs, the whole thing. They use the skin or the pelt or whatever, but it's the bones and the bone meal that gives them their next most significant source of minerals, especially the bone building minerals. What do you know, right? Bone and joint minerals are best gotten in the wild environment by eating bones and joints. So it's not just grinding up the bones and using them in breads and as thickeners and stuff like that, but it's also putting bones in the soup and leaching out whatever is left
from whatever you're not grinding up. So it's not an easy thing, it's not an easy task to live without supplements. It's much actually easier to live with supplements. And there's many things to be said about, you know, ingredients and processes and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, well, you need to get this, right? And if we don't have this lifestyle, we haven't been using wood for over 100 years, really, in the industrialized world. So we've got generations of this problem already existing. And so we've got to kick it up into the other direction here. And the only way to really do it in our environment is with supplements. But it's good news and it's bad news, right? The good news is you don't have to move to the places that the longest lived people actually live. And the same person said, what about in the USA? How can people be healthy? You can't do it without supplements in the USA. It's physically impossible to get all your nutrients from the environment, especially from the grocery store environment, but even from a homestead environment. Even if you're using wood ashes, you can't guarantee that wood, because there is nowhere in the USA that has all the minerals in the soil. And you can't guarantee that wood is going to have all the nutrients. And you're getting trees from here and there. The minerals are distributed unevenly all over the place. They're low generally in the soil, especially in the US. Soil depletion is rampant across the whole. That's why they had to move west, apparently, right? Sucked up all the minerals, turned into dust bowls as they move further and further west. So the trees, wherever you're getting them from, they're going to have some minerals in it. This one's going to have a different composition than this one, but you're not guaranteeing that you're getting all 60 essential minerals from that source. And the longest lived people who do get all their minerals don't get it from just the tree. It's not just the wood ash itself. It's the fact that they're able to get the whole spread of the minerals somehow from their environment. There is a blue zone in America. It's in Loma Linda, California, Southern California, and they don't get all their minerals, and the reason they're considered a blue zone is because they're compared to other populations. The life expectancy isn't actually very high compared to some of the longest lived people out there, meaning there's people who shoot far past the averages. We're talking 120, we're talking 140, and there is people reported over 200 years old, believe it or not. You know, China is the most reliable source for some super long-lived people because we believe they carried very good records, and they still have them. This doesn't happen in the US. In the Loma Linda population, they're mostly Seventh-day Adventists, which means they are mostly towards the plant-based vegetarian philosophy, not necessarily the vegan philosophy. They do fast regularly, and it's within their beliefs to abstain from some of the things that really screw us up, especially alcohol, drugs, and that kind of stuff, and prescription drugs, wouldn't you know? So they're able to become a blue zone, which means people who make it to 100 at a statistically higher rate than the rest of the world or whatever populations you're comparing it to. And it's not hard to become a blue zone in America if you're comparing it to the actual American population in longevity or any health markers. So in the US is probably the most challenging environment, not just because of the soil depletion, also because of the bad food. I mean, whatever the bad foods are worse in America. There's more bad ingredients in the junk food. There's more ingredients in the food that you wouldn't even think of as junk food, right? There's more things allowed. There's more pesticides. The price is higher, in my opinion, than most places I've seen. It costs more to eat in America. And you've got radiation too. You know, you've got a ton of cell phone towers and other activity in these major cities in America, but even in the small towns, you know, it's not a healthy environment, really. You've got a lot to overcome, and supplementing is the best way to do it, right? I mean, look at antioxidants. You need a ton of antioxidants in your daily life. Where are you getting them from? Right? You have to add them up at the grocery store. Even if you're just doing dollar for dollar, you're spending so much money for so little antioxidants compared to what you actually need. You need so much more antioxidants in America, especially living in the city, than you would out in the wild. Right? Dr. Wallach says we need at least double what they get in the wild. Sometimes 5 times what they get in the wild, and you couldn't get that from the wild because you couldn't eat it that much. Right? You couldn't eat that many blueberries or whatever is wild growing herbs to get your antioxidants. They get more out there, but we need to go even further than that, and that's where concentrated products come in. And they call them supplements at the end of the line, but these things all derive from nature, somewhere, somehow. Right? And we're just concentrating them down, and in some cases we have to change the form to make them more available for us once they sit on a shelf. Sometimes they're not meant to sit on a shelf, that kind of thing, right? It's a complicated process, and if we want to live in this advanced society, you know, away from the natural sources of nutrients, then we have to be smart about it and overcome that. And supplementing is the answer, and there is no other answer. It is not possible to do it otherwise.
I have people message me, by the way, who live kind of off-grid, way out there, and we have a house way up north too, by the way, where it is much more possible to live more of a natural life. You could actually catch your own food and burn your wood and have a homestead and all that kind of stuff. And there's no blue zones in the northern part of the American continent, Canadian continent, right? With people up in Alaska, like, they still have health problems and they're living the natural lifestyle. It's because they don't have access to all the nutrients there, period, right? And they're already choosing a very difficult lifestyle out there, going and doing it all for themselves, and they're still not able to secure all the things that they need. What is the difference between inorganic versus organic minerals? Minerals are basically combinations of atoms to make up elements, apparently, supposedly. And some magic happens when a plant absorbs a mineral, any mineral. It absorbs it into its tissue, and now it becomes ionic, it becomes colloidal, it becomes organic, it becomes an organic mineral. And there's no real fundamental chemical distinction other than the fact that it now has a charge to it. It now has an electrical charge to it. That's the ionic component of it. So a colloidal mineral, it's not actually a solution. If you took a handful of just minerals, just sand, just dirt, actually dirt, often it's highly organic because it's been through the process already. It's from leaves. If it's from a leaf and it's been broken down, that means it's already got the organic minerals in it, so soil's different. But if you took a handful of sand or clay or something like that and you dropped it, shook it up in a bottle of water, and you see it become super cloudy, you just wait, it's gonna settle down. If you take plant-derived minerals in any form, especially concentrated form that you can see with your eyes, you put it into the water, mix it in, and it stays in suspension forever. It never settles out, right? You could leave it on the table forever, it never settles out. It's like a perpetual motion machine. And this is the difference between organic and inorganic minerals, right? And we talk a lot about animals and we compare it to animals, by the way, and one of the questions that comes up is, well, how does a cow get everything that it needs? And one of the problems here is that we're comparing our nutritional needs with animals that don't actually have that long of life expectancy. Like, birds will go and they'll eat clay, and all animals, they'll eat bones that they find, they'll eat dirt, they'll eat all this kind of stuff. They're searching for minerals, but it's impossible for them to really get the optimal amounts that they need out there in the wild. And that's why when we have animals ourselves as livestock, we do have to supplement them or they will actually die. They won't produce milk, or they won't produce babies. So inorganic versus organic minerals is a huge distinction. We do require organic minerals to thrive, especially the trace minerals. And when we're just talking about wood ashes and that's colloidal minerals, right? Burning sea moss, burning wood, now you're left over with the plant-derived minerals. And if you do put that into water in a solution, or you do get that into your body somehow, again, people use it as a condiment out there in the wild. They use wood ashes as a condiment. Not the dirty ash, the white ash, the nice ash in the middle. They use that as culinary ash, and they throw the rest in the garden. And that can be absorbed right directly into the tissues. It can be absorbed into the mouth. It can be absorbed onto the skin, right? I've seen people put it on their skin when they had something like vitiligo. I had one extreme case where a man tested it on one spot with his vitiligo, just putting the minerals right on the skin, and pigment came back very quickly, not completely, but it immediately had a response within days. And I was amazed. And this can happen with any very, very concentrated form of organic minerals, and many of them out there are promoted to have the full spread of minerals in them, and they do, right? But it's the concentration, it is the ratios, and it is definitely the dose involved as well. And that's why we like humic shale is our main source of plant-derived minerals, and that's the basis of our 90 essential nutrients program. Essentially is the 60 essential minerals in plant-derived form. And the difference between organic and inorganic is not even measurable. There's very little results to be had by consuming inorganic minerals. And we were just talking about animals a minute ago. They'll consume a lot of inorganic minerals in order to try and get everything that they need, right? They'll keep doing that as long as they live. Someone said, how to remove gallstones. Now, first you want to check, if you do know that you have gallstones, you want to check and make sure that they're not too large, right? If you do attempt to flush them and they are too large, there is a chance that they can get stuck in the gallbladder, and now you actually have an emergency situation in which you actually, at this point, you do need to go to the hospital and they do need to intervene surgically. Now, I passed some very large gallstones, and it was quite uncomfortable, and it explained also why
I was doing a liver detox, the 30-day liver detox, but usually the flush of it happens, the action happens on the second morning. You prepare the solutions on the first day, you take them on the first day, you fast on the first day, and then in the morning on the second day you wake up and you have a flush, a liver flush, a gall flush, and you get the stones out. I had to wait a full 24 hours, and I couldn't understand why, but I could almost feel it, you know, building up and trying to move through me, and it could have actually been stuck, and it could have taken time to pass through, and it could have been an emergency situation in that case. Now the answer to this is to break them up with ultrasound first before you attempt to flush them, or even Dr. Glidden might say even just leave them in some case and just promote the body otherwise. Right, support the body with the 90 essential nutrients, getting rid of the bad foods, you know, doing more mild detox or a different type of detox, a body detox rather than a focused liver gallbladder detox. And oftentimes the body will dissolve the stones themselves, and you still will need an actual flush, but the environment in the gallbladder and liver would have changed, especially if you weren't taking heaps of selenium or getting heaps of selenium, for instance, and its cofactors in your life, then your liver is going to be underfunctioning already, your liver is going to be undersized already, right? So there's already going to be a problem there. So if you take time, this is what we're saying, take time, take 3, 6, 12 months to just support the body, chances are when you go back and look, the stones aren't there. But for the average person, we recommend a 30-day liver detox anyways, right? And now Dr. Glidden, again, he would recommend it 90 days into the supplement program. We've been recommending it earlier on, and we haven't had any problems. We've never had an emergency or anything like that. In fact, I haven't even heard of an emergency in any of the circles, you know, the webs of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people that have done this exact liver detox and passed stones, and they're instructed on how to see that they've passed the stones. Nobody's ever gone to the emergency that I'm aware of, right? But it is a possibility, it is a potential possibility, especially out here on the internet. You don't know who's listening, we don't know your situation, and you could have massive stones. And maybe I should have got mine checked before, I don't know. But it is actually quite an easy thing though. Like I said, it just takes 2 days to flush them, but this is also a serious process on the body, and when your body does do a liver detox, it does release a lot of toxins, and that's why Dr. Glidden says he doesn't want you to do the liver detox until you've done the nutrition for 3 full months first, right? 90 full days first, because you do want to have your body ready to push those toxins out. You don't want those toxins staying around the body, and that's what could happen if you're not nourished enough to begin with going into it. And the body may not even go through the process, it may reject it if it doesn't have everything that it needs to go through it. And that's something that I believe from experience, it's actually not something that's really scientifically validated. Detox, I've seen a lot of people attempt different types of detoxes, and some people get extraordinary results and some people don't. And I do believe the ones that don't, their body's not allowing them to go into a detox process. It's not taking, it's not utilizing, it's not absorbing whatever the active ingredients are. And in the case of a liver detox, it will actually reject the stuff itself and prevent the process from happening. So it's more complicated of an answer than usually we just say take the liver detox, but it's worth going into detail on the other things involved with this. So guys, I know there's more questions here, but I only had 20 minutes to jump on, and it's good going into detail on some specific subjects, and I hope you got some value from it. I appreciate you all, a ton of love and respect, and we'll see you next time. What's up, everybody that's joining? What exactly are chicken eggs? Is the first question. Chicken eggs they're meant to grow a chicken. They have a little bit of everything that's meant to grow a chicken. It's essentially the embryo of the chicken. In a chicken egg, you can see a little white spot on top of the yolk. It's like the size of an O in a typewritten sentence. That's the embryo. That embryo will grow by consuming the rest of the nutrients in the egg. So this is one of the reasons why we promote eggs as a good healing food, because it does have all the growth factors necessary to grow an animal with a spine, which is a chicken. And every animal with a spine does need the same nutrients. They need different ratios. They have different ways of getting it. For instance, a cow, you know, has a whole stomach devoted to producing bacteria and such to digest hard to digest things and create nutrients for the cow. You know, so it needs the same things, but it gets them in a different way. So is a chicken egg an aborted chicken basically, or a chicken period? Well, an egg doesn't have to be fertilized. Most eggs that we'll be eating are not fertilized eggs. If we were to get chickens up here in the north, have our own chickens, we wouldn't even have a rooster, right? A rooster just eats.
it's just an eater. Unless you're looking to create baby chickens, you don't need fertilized eggs. And so is it an aborted chicken basically? No, not really. A chicken will continue to lay eggs. If you take the egg away from the chicken, it'll lay another egg tomorrow. You know, it'll keep doing that. It's a natural process. And one chicken should produce 1.5 eggs per chicken per day. If the chicken isn't keeping up with that capacity, it's a nutritional problem. It gives us other clues, you know, into human procreation and such. Hey guys, everybody who's joining, go ahead and put some questions in here if you like. Can you explain structured water? Structured water is interesting just from a theoretical perspective. I first started to get interested in this because you hear a lot about this, by the way. The Kangen water people, they're crazy. You know, they'll bombard you with information, and they have a lot of information. There's a lot to be said on structured water, just in all the technical aspects of it. But I was first really curious about it because of Dr. Emoto's work with the emotions of water, right? And some people say that it's been a hoax or whatever, they haven't been able to replicate it, but I really do believe that you can impact the structure of water and the structure of nature itself, because water extrapolates out to everything, right? Not just in the fruits and vegetables and in our structures, but the atmosphere, everything. Water is sort of the carrier, the medium that life takes place in, right? So I wouldn't underestimate the value of structured water itself. There's lots of problems with how we produce water as a society, right? It's a silly thing that we do have this municipal water production thing. It's a big problem. You know, one of the ways that we would design a sort of a healthy society would definitely be scrapping the municipal water system, in my opinion, the sewer system, in my opinion. You definitely want to separate out waste, you know, from the drinking water itself, especially if you can separate the sources rather than recycling that water. But either way, filtering it closer to the source removes a lot of the problems that municipal filtering has, right? And then redistributing it. And then of course, it's not just fluoride. They put chlorine in it to keep down the pathogens in it, because there's a lot of stagnant water and there's just a lot of inconsistencies in the filtering processes. So they put chlorine in it to be safe, and actually they put more chlorine in it when more water goes into the system. So you can pay attention to it next time it rains big or the snow's melting or something like that. Go in and smell your tap water, smell the toilet water, smell the shower water, and you can smell the chlorine on it more. They put more in it to compensate for the influx in the system. So there's big problems with that. And you're talking about structured water. If you believe at all that frequencies can affect the structure of water, at least in the sense of Dr. Emoto's work, right, showing the difference in changes in crystallizing, the moment that a liquid water molecule transitions to a solid, it crystallizes, and Dr. Emoto filmed that, took pictures of water that was exposed to negative and positive emotions, and showed that the ones that were exposed to the negative frequencies, you know, in speech or thought or even words written on tape and put onto the jar, that those didn't form beautiful structures like a snowflake, whereas the ones that were given, you know, love or positive affection or emotion or frequencies or energy or however you want to think about it, they did crystallize properly. In the body, we don't have as good of an idea because it's less well studied. You need electron microscopes and stuff inside living tissues. It can be quite a complicated process, but we do theorize that water is meant to accept water at its proper structure as it would appear in nature. And first of all, this isn't pure water because there's no such thing as pure water in nature. Water is a very hungry molecule. It's a very active molecule. Both oxygen and hydrogen, they're always bonding with things. So they form these bonds and they grab onto other compounds. This is at least how we visualize chemistry, right? It can be very complicated to think about, but so it's going to be mixed with other things in nature either way. If it's moving, you know, it's going to have a different structure to it. The structure that we use in our structured water program, you use a product of structured water. One dose is a teaspoon, a capful, every 30 minutes for 30 days. That protocol is double what it used to be to compensate for the increased radiation in the environment, the increased cell phone usage and cell phone towers and 5G and all this. We need to increase the dose of structured water to get a result. This is mostly how we know this stuff, by the way. It's by result. And the reason that we use our structured water is because that frequency is the same that's measured in the deepest ocean water, you know, that we can find. And that seems to just be slightly different than the structured water sources that you could find in a waterfall, for instance, even though that's going to be so far and above what you could imagine from from tap water and even from filtered water, right? Your water can be clean and it can be completely dead of energy. And I do believe that not all distillers are equal, right? And what happens after the water is filtered also matters. It matters if it's sitting in a container, it matters what type of reservoir it's sitting in, right? A lot of people promote cylindrical, like they don't have stopping points, dead points in the container. The water is allowed to sort of never settle out when it's in a sort of cylindrical container. I don't know how long that effect lasts for. I don't know if you can just leave it on the counter. And this sounds way too complicated, but when you're talking about structured water, it is complicated. It is a lot of theory. It is a lot of extrapolating, you know, and we do have a strange amount of results just on this water problem itself. And I explain this sort of like the same as with radiation, right? Because I know that if you're under too much radiation stress, the nutrients aren't going to work for you, right? If everybody's exposed to radiation, everybody's affected by radiation. Some people are affected much more, and some people's lifestyle put them into much more exposure. So if your blood is being impacted by radiation and your blood vessels are crinkling up and they're clumping together and they're folding up, they're not going to be able to transport nutrients around properly. They're not going to be able to transport oxygen around properly. They're not going to be able to transport waste around properly, and this can cause massive problems in the body. So a person can buy all the 90 essential nutrients and they can eat all the right foods and avoid the bad foods, and they can still have major problems in every system in their body or any system in their body, because the effects of radiation, you know, they can appear like any other problem in the body, basically any chronic inflammation problem. They can appear as digestive problems, headaches, all kinds of things that we would know the nutritional explanation for, but that nutritional explanation is void if the nutrition can't get to the cells. And it's the same with structured water, right? Your blood cells carry around the nutrients. Your blood cells are made of water, right? The water is the underlying foundational substrate for everything in your body to take place. All of these reactions that we talk about, they need minerals and cofactors. It's because it's a given that it's already taking place. We take it for granted that it's already taking place in a water environment. So that is the catalyst for all this stuff to happen. And water is involved in the absorption of all these nutrients as well, and involved in the digestion. So when water is the most important nutrient, like you hear me saying salt is the most important nutrient, it is obviously, but you know, oxygen and water, these things you can't live without, and they make everything else happen. And if you're drinking unstructured water and your cells are unable to accept that water properly or utilize it properly, you're going to be underfunctioning at every system in the body. A few months ago, we started recommending structured water as a starting protocol. The idea was to get more people to start with structured water before starting with supplements. And we do get good results with supplements, but I've been talking about this a little bit over the last year, and it's something that people don't want to talk about, is that in every nutrition company that we're familiar with, every herbal company that I'm familiar with, every other, you know, noni juice, any of these other antioxidant products, super juice products, I know that they're not getting as good results now as they were 5 years ago. They got better results 5 years ago. People who have been in the business 10 years, 20 years, I know they got better results back in the day. This is because of the radiation stress. The radiation stress is also going to be affecting the structure of your body, of your cells, everything, right? So structured water is one component to fight that, because if your cells are working properly, each one of your cells resonates at a frequency that adds up. And this sounds hokey to the nutrition community, some of it, because we're used to just thinking, you know, very mechanically about foods and about nutrients, but this is much more than a mechanical explanation. You know, this is a supernatural sort of explanation. It's obviously natural, but we don't understand it, right? There's some of these processes can seem so miraculous as to seem paranormal. But we know generally that we get less results now with nutrition in general. And we know that we need to increase that by radiation. It's not by more nutrition products, right? If you're not absorbing the nutrition products, or your cells aren't getting the nutrients because, again, the blood vessels are crinkled up, the radiation's affecting the body, or the structured water, or the structure of your water, the structure of the water in each one of your cells is really impeding this process. So having the correct structured water can just allow the floodgates to open and the body to start working properly. And this might be described as cellular function, although it's quite hard to measure. But when you increase your cellular function without nutrition, you're going to be able to utilize the nutrition much better, if that makes sense. And I'm yet to see it. I don't think actually anybody has ordered just the structured water without any supplements, but I would like to see more people try that. This is more of a control thing, you know. I know a lot of people who have done the structured water program, but they're also doing these other things. And again, my theory is that they should get a better value of the supplements when they do get it. And a lot of people do want to start right now, and it's great for them to start right now, but if they don't get their maximum results right now, we might lose our chances at having them as a long-term customer, right? They came to us in trust, they came to us in faith, and they want a solution. And if we fail to provide that solution, it is kind of on us. So this is why we do need to attack the radiation more, and this is why we need to do structured water more and talk more about structured water. And one day I probably will be here talking about a $5,000 Cagnum water machine or some equivalent, right? Something that's going to structure the water in your everyday life rather than using a structured water supplement program. But even that it's pretty affordable, truthfully, because you're not taking very much. And then once you do the initial recommended dose for the 30 days and get your cellular energy up, which should be able to be measured in your energy and how you feel and how you're digesting things, and you know, you should be able to feel this in many different ways. Then you don't even need, you know, a regular dose. You can take it as needed, and just like other nutrients, salt and vitamins and minerals, your body will tell you that it wants it. You will be able to pick that up as a craving and deliver your body a dose of structured water, and it will treat it like a nutrient itself, right? So it's just interesting to think about that not all water is equal, and that can be very important. Just like not all supplements are equal, right? Not all nutrient sources are equal, not all herbal tinctures are equal, certainly, right? There's different lengths of time that they process it, there's different strengths of alcohol that they use to distill it, there's different temperatures, right? People can screw that up. There's all types of things that can happen in the manufacturing processes that end up with a different product. And if you think about all the things that happen to your water before you get it, you can imagine how many things can impact the structure of it. If something as simple as Dr. Emoto's work with negative feelings, right? Imagine what happens within transport of water from source to store to you, you know, and so many things in between there can affect that. Someone says, your page has literally changed my life. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate all you guys. This is a two-way street here. Can't really be on this mission without you guys. There is no mission without you guys. Someone says structure is part of life. It is, and it is underappreciated as well. And I wish we could talk more about it. Like, I wish we had more direct, physical, in-your-face, descriptive evidence about it, but we really don't. And I would like to collect more and more testimonials on structure itself. I'm aware of some pretty miraculous healings with just frequency treatment itself. I'm not talking about frequency tuning discs, I'm talking about like singing bowls and tuning forks and this kind of thing. But even what they would say, and like Reiki practitioners and all this kind of stuff, acupuncturists, anything that works on energy, they're gonna say that that result doesn't carry through. You can't do acupuncture once, you know, and continue that benefit. You can't get a tuning fork therapy session and keep that benefit. You know, it's a very short-term thing, whereas a frequency tuning disc, right, that's long-term. It stays on you, and that frequency benefits you as long as it's on, you know. Someone says, you ever take B3 niacin? How do you feel about it? B3 is an essential nutrient. All vitamins are essential, by the way. They're called vitamins because they're vital amines, just chemical group. Amines, so niacin is one of the essential nutrients. You need it. You'll get a disease if you don't have it, and I believe it's a beriberi in that cluster of symptoms that's caused by niacin deficiency. Niacin or riboflavin, I believe it is niacin though. And you can actually get itchy skin, something like that, a rash from too much niacin, especially if it doesn't have its cofactors present. But generally it's not a concern. It's just we take it at our regular doses in our regular products. We don't take a niacin product specifically. I wouldn't recommend boosting it just because it's not necessary. You wouldn't need to go out of your way to boost niacin. You'll get what you get in the food supply. What do you say to people like Dr. Sebi who say milk is bad and meat leads to mucus buildup and mucus being the cause of all diseases? Well, saying mucus is a cause of disease, saying that mucus is a cause of a disease is kind of like saying that a tumor is a cause of cancer. It's the result of the disease, it's not the disease itself. So mucus is the result of the body reacting to something's going on in the body. It could be a food irritating it, could be any food irritating it, by the way. If you're not digesting food properly,
any undigested food that gets into the blood is going to be a problem. Your blood's going to react to it. This is called dirty blood, but you're also going to have an inflammatory mucus reaction as well. The mucus is produced to respond to a threat, and an undigested food particle could be a threat, right? You could have a genuine threat. You could have a parasite in you. By the way, most people are walking around with a parasite in them. Anybody watching this, 99 out of 100 of the people who would watch would go and get a hair analysis and it would tell you that you have parasites in it, or a live blood analysis and it'll tell you that you have parasites in it, or a stool sample or something like that, tell you have parasites. That's going to be contributing to low grade inflammation all throughout the body. That the body's going to be responding to that constantly, right? There's some full-blown disease states that really can't be addressed unless this is addressed. So if you have candida in your body, or you have fungus in your body, or you have, the bug that causes rheumatoid arthritis, right? This is going to be causing a mucus production no matter what you eat or if you don't eat. The nutrient deficiencies themselves, your immune system could be weak, so therefore even the minor things that we are exposed to regularly, the minor things all around us in the air, the pollen and cats, right? This stuff irritates people with a weakened immune system. There's no such thing as an allergy to cats or to pollen, unless the only real allergy is anaphylactic, right? Nobody needs an EpiPen for a cat, right? So that means everything that you don't need an EpiPen for, everything that's not anaphylactic, is a sensitivity, and all sensitivities can be reversed. Most of them are reversed within 90 days. Some of them take a little bit longer, but it's just boosting the immune system up. So I'm saying this because your body could be under threat by something that's not really a threat, and your body's producing mucus to that threat because it doesn't have the nutrients to deal with it. So the alkaline diet, the Dr. Sebi thing, it's just not correct. It's very easy to tell if somebody's alkaline or acidic, and this is why, by the way, I don't know how this theory gained traction, because you can tell if somebody's acidic or alkaline immediately, within a couple of hours. If you put a copper bracelet or any piece of copper, a copper wire, tie it around somebody's ankle, leave it there for an hour or two. If they start to turn green or blue or black, then they're slightly acidic. And obviously a minor fluctuation in pH can kill you, but there's a very small change that happens when you're acidic or alkaline, and that will change the way that your skin reacts to the copper. If you're alkaline, you will have no green marks underneath your copper bracelet or your copper wire. So you can eat meat. I eat meat, right? I drink coffee. I'm alkaline right now. I'm wearing copper right now. There's no green or blue on me, right? It's a very simple thing. You can change that, right? You can dehydrate yourself. I can drink too much coffee. I could have a little bit of alcohol that's gonna affect that. I would bet that a couple of bags of chips, maybe 1, 2, would probably turn my skin green if I were to do that. Junk food, pretty much of any kind, right? A sugar overload for sure. Throw you into green mode. But I've seen plenty of people who bought these frequency tuning disc bracelets, got green, came to us and said, "But I'm green, what's going on?" Walked them through the nutrition protocols, and 90 days later, or more even if it takes them a while to get into the habit, then once they're finally fully clean of all that stuff and they're taking the 90 essential nutrients, especially the minerals, and then they're gonna be alkaline. Now, by the way, the single biggest factor in alkalinity is whether or not you have enough calcium. Calcium is the most alkaline compound that we have. They say that Himalayan salt might be the most alkaline compound, but it might be true. But you need Himalayan salt, or you need salt of some kind to have a strong stomach acid. You need that to absorb calcium. The calcium is what's going to make you alkaline more than anything. If you are eating an all vegetable diet, especially a raw plant-based diet, long term this is going to be robbing your body of calcium because of the phytates. Anything that cracks or pops or snaps, you bite into a carrot or a turnip, it pops. Same with nuts, right? Unless they're roasted fully or boiled, and they'll pop. This will be contributing to phytates. This will be binding with the calcium in your body, creating phytic acid, robbing your body of calcium and other minerals. So you can actually be highly acidic if you're eating all vegetables. It sounds counterintuitive, and it's because Sebi got some things right, but very generally he didn't. And a lot of the things that he talked about are just strange, in my opinion. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent about it, but a lot of what he's Instagram famous for is reversing AIDS, supposedly, right? Meanwhile, I'm saying, not Dr. Wallach or not anybody else, I'm saying that the only way to get AIDS is to take an HIV test, let them tell you you have HIV or AIDS, depending on the amount of markers that they find. Supposedly, maybe
maybe it's a false positive, who knows, but they tell you that you have it, and then you take AIDS drugs. It's the only way to die from AIDS, my opinion, right? It's the only way to even have AIDS. My opinion is that if these same people didn't go in and get an HIV test or AIDS test, then they would have died of what they regularly would have died from their generalized nutrition. Die of heart disease or diabetes or stroke or something like that, cancer, not supposedly AIDS, right? When you die of AIDS, you die of AIDS drugs. Or you're somebody who's diagnosed with AIDS and you die of pneumonia and they say you died of AIDS. Meanwhile, we know many people who have been alive for a long time just saw basic supplementation, basic diet and lifestyle changes. Magic Johnson's one famous example. It's not really even necessary to use any other examples because he was told that he didn't have very long to live, and he heard that supplementing with selenium, the master antioxidant, the mineral that you need to utilize antioxidants, including the antioxidants that you produce within your body, glutathione. He heard that supplementation with selenium helped prevent HIV mutation into AIDS. I don't even like that language because I think it's more of a hoax and a misunderstanding than an actual, something is mutating or something. But he's still alive and well, he's thriving. Lots of people are. So if somebody like Dr. Sebi, again, it's nothing to bash him, probably an excellent human being. If he's famous or Instagram famous from curing AIDS, to me that's not much of an accomplishment, because you could just not get AIDS treatment and you won't die of AIDS. It's my opinion, right? And you're gonna get good results on inflammation and all kinds of things when you encourage people to move from whatever standard they were using onto a more plant-based lifestyle or a fully plant-based lifestyle. Especially the short-term benefits are gonna be incredible. And I always have to say this, whenever Dr. Sebi is mentioned, I always have to say that I'm familiar enough with the carnivore diet and the carnivore movement that I know that they get phenomenal immediate initial results as well, right? They get immediate transformative changes in people who stop eating the standard diet and eat pure carnivore. Also pure keto, also pure whatever, right? Even the Mediterranean diet, as much as we don't like the Mediterranean diet because of the oil and possibly the gluten in it, it's mistaken. The Mediterranean diet can mean all kinds of things. But even the Mediterranean diet, people can get great results on immediately because they're into some structure that's taking them away from a lot of the bad stuff that they were eating before, right? So mucus is not the cause of disease. Mucus is the result of disease. No, not disease. Disease is a weird word too, by the way, right? Disease is just a word. It's a word to call a group of symptoms. A group of symptoms appear, they got to give it a name. If it's slightly different in a slightly different part of the body, they give it a different name, so it's all just the body not working properly in the simplest language, right? Too much of the bad stuff, not enough of the good stuff. If they're too far along down the line, they might need some extra support, some herbal support, some medicinal support of some kind. They might need something like a physical treatment. I do believe that there can be physical blockages within the body that do need to be liberated in the fascia by massage and physical forceful manipulation, stuff like that, circulatory exercises. And this might not necessarily be necessary in the wild environment, but it's necessary in our environment because we've allowed nutrient deficiencies and toxicity and bad foods to build up in our body to the point where we have a circulation problem, right? So even if you might not need to do circulation exercises out there in the wild, you need to do them now to get better, some people, right? And for a lot of people, we don't know what is going to be their key. Right? We're finding more and more difficulty actually in finding the key in some cases, and I think it's a combination of all of this, the radiation increasing, the exposure to toxicity increasing. I don't think it's as much of an effect of nutrient deficiencies because to me that's kind of stayed stable. Like obviously the amount of minerals in the soil is going down, but it's not, like it's kind of already really down. So the reason we're seeing an increase in difficulty in finding the key to some people's healing, I think, is other factors. I do think it's the toxicity, I do think it's the chemicals, and I do think it's also the radiation is going to be the next biggest contributor. And not other things, not air pollution, not necessarily the bad foods, because again, the bad foods are pretty consistent, and actually a lot of the people that we see who are having trouble finding their key to healing, they already eat well. That's the reason they eat well. They've been searching for the answers for a long time, so I know that that's not the biggest key. I'm gonna keep bringing that up as time goes on because we're gonna have to, we've talked about this behind the scenes too, we're gonna have to incorporate more and more healing strategies as time goes on, as radiation increases, as nutrient deficiencies increase. As the generation that's growing up now comes to us, right, the 18-year-olds now, they might need a lot different approach than the 38-year-old or the 18-year-old did 20 years ago. Remember, it was a lot easier to get results 20 years ago in the health business, supposedly by all accounts that I know of. Can you post the name and ordering details for the structured water you recommend? The structured water, you can DM us. You can go into the link in the bio of this account. It goes to our shop. It's in the nutrition category, and I believe it's also in the EMF product category, because I do consider it an EMF product. I want to go back to that a little bit. With the structured water thing, and when you get your cells, your cellular function increase, and your cells are able to pump out frequency properly, the proper resonance, that adds up to a layer of protective energy around you that prevents a lot of the radiation from coming in. It's not a surefire 100% thing, right? It's like wearing a bulletproof vest and it's stopping a lot of bullets, but there's still a fire happening around us kind of thing, right? It's not full protection, but having your cellular energy increases is key in part of this, you know. And by the way, water is structured through vegetables as well, and plants as well. And it's part of the interesting thing about nature too, right? We know that plants, through an interaction with the fungus in the soil, suck minerals up, like rocks, clay, inorganic minerals. They suck them up into the plant. As they're sucked into the plant, they're transformed into colloidal ionic minerals. And it so happens to be the form that all vertebrates utilize in their own cellular transactions. So the plants transform the minerals into the form that we need, and they also transform the water into the form that we need. And this is probably part of why celery juice, coconut water, and other vegetable juices can be so tremendously beneficial, because they are structured water, right? And you're gonna have other sources. If it's organic, then it's not gonna have as many chemical exposure and stuff like that. This can be great. It would be difficult, it wouldn't be very cost effective to get all of your liquids from vegetable juice, but if you did, you would be drinking structured water all day. And now, that would be one of the reasons why there is such tremendous benefits in that realm, aside from nutrition, aside from anything else that they do, just juice in itself. And typically, by the way, we meet a lot of people with osteoporosis and diabetes and stuff, and they've been on the juicing kick, they've been on the eating well kick, and they've gotten a certain amount of results, right? So we know that it's great for a lot of things, and structured water is going to be one of them. These people are feeling better generally, you know, they know that life is better juicing, but they still have osteoporosis or diabetes or something that's a direct mineral deficiency, because that's not filled in by the juice, right? And by the way, you could always DM us about any product specifics. We do really like to help and make sure that people are buying the right things. Obviously, also, we like to help manage that transaction so we can get a commission off it as well. But either way, we're gonna be helping you get the best price. If it is best for you to order off Amazon, in some cases, in some countries where it's not easy for us to ship to, we'll still help you with it. We'll still answer your questions after. Someone said mental illness. It's a bit difficult to address a question that just says mental illness. I would actually ask you to clarify that, because my general thing probably isn't going to be satisfying, especially because a lot of the people who are on here have probably heard it before, that mental illness can have a lot to do with blood sugar. It can have a lot to do with specific mineral deficiencies, especially anxiety, depression, two different things, but they have a lot of nutritional components. But you also have mindset, which is extremely important. A lot of people have diseases of attitude, right? Just as prevalent as physical diseases, if not more prevalent, is diseases of attitude. And diseases of attitude are not nutritional, right? And they're something that does actually need to be addressed consciously. You might not be aware of your own diseases of attitude producing negative thought patterns, producing negative behaviors, and producing this sort of cycle, right? You're not doing the right thing, you're feeling bad about it, it causes you to have even less energy, and you know, it's a spiral of depression. So it can be a huge conversation. I would ask this person to clarify that question. And you can ask something more specific about mental illness. I had a chance to meet Dr. Sebi, great soul. I believe you. He totally looks like a good person, you know. And obviously he cared and he's out there spreading the message. It's just, it wasn't completely correct. And the people that try and utilize that advice, a lot of them come to us, right? And they're like, I try and eat like Dr. Sebi. It's a very common thing actually in our inbox to have people say, I lean more towards the Dr. Sebi, right? The Dr. Sebi protocol. And it's just not enough. And again, it's just not true. You can drink coffee, you can eat meat, and you can be alkaline. You don't need coffee, you also don't need meat, but you can eat those things and still be alkaline, and you can also heal your diseases. And all the diseases that they're talking about that you need to go plant-based to heal, you don't need to go plant-based to heal those things. Ryan, can a salt flush be progressive? It's rough to start. If a salt flush is really salty, salt might not be your key. We want people to do a salt flush because we don't know what your salt level is at. And a lot of people will be like, yeah, I use salt, but they're able to drink a whole glass of salt water, so that means that they were low on salt, they weren't using enough. And I do feel that just even people who use salt, they're not using enough. So we recommend the salt flush to top you up. But even if you only take a few sips, it's a lot of salt, and you taste it and it's way too salty, you're topped up, you're all good. You don't need to worry. It's a really good thing. If you can drink the whole thing, it means you've got a chronic problem. If you can drink 2 of them, you've got a serious problem, and it's gonna take you a minute. And if the more of the salt that you can drink, the sooner you should do the next salt flush. If you can drink the whole thing, wait 24 hours, 48 hours, do it again. And you don't want to do it all at once, just because we've learned, now we've given it to a whole bunch of people, we've learned that if you have too much at once, even if you're deficient, you can't load it up all at once. You might throw up, might get diarrhea, you might get a really bad headache, right? So now we split it up. We tell people only do 1 glass max, and then do the next one as needed. If you ever have stomach pain, do it, right? And when you have stomach pain, by the way, the salt flush protocol changes. You want to keep doing it until the pain goes away. If you pour a glass of salt water, and for the regular salt flush we recommend 3 heaping tablespoons. If you do that and you can drink the whole thing and you still have stomach pain, double it for the next glass. Put 6 heaping tablespoons in it. Because we don't want you to have that much water. We'll fill you up with water, that's not the cure here. Drink it until stomach pain goes away. It will go away if you drink enough salt, 99% of the time. And don't eat too much food in the future. Start to be conscious of this. And by the way, I mean, just having enough salt and not eating the bad foods, it's not enough. You can still overeat. I can still overeat. I can eat too much of a big steak or something, you know, too much rice even, right? When you're not eating very much food, too much food can happen very quickly, and you might be in a little bit of pain still, even with enough salt. You can feel it. You can feel the soothing feeling of the salt. You can feel yourself burping it up. You can feel it going through the system. But you know you ate too much food, and you need to get conscious control of that, because that's the biggest cause, right? And why is it? That causes salt deficiency too, because you need salt to digest foods. The more food you eat, the more salt you need too. And again, if it's rough to start, that might not be your key, and that's good. It's good. We just need you to use enough salt. Don't need to stress too much about it. We put a lot of emphasis on it, but it's not something that you need to be consciously really that engaged with. When you're learning to become salt sensitive, you want to pay closer attention to it, but it becomes very second nature. And everybody that I know in this realm, they've all just increased their salt use naturally. And again, a big part of that is just not being afraid of it. You know, we're telling people not to be afraid of it. They're allowing themselves to use as much as they want to use, and that's a great thing. Someone here, I assume they're talking about Dr. Sebi. They said he was taken to court and proved he cured all 17. That is great, you know. Obviously the rest of the world doesn't accept cure anyway. They don't get that excited by it, so we're just going on individual cases here. Anybody who is suffering with something they've been told is HIV or AIDS, I believe that person is very easy to be declared cured. You know, if you're looking at symptoms, they should be able to take all their markers under control, just like diabetes or cancer or something like that. The only thing that we can't legally say is that if you do this, you will cure your cancer, or this will treat your AIDS. We can't use that language, but I have huge confidence that we can take any individual and support and promote the body's natural ability to maintain, repair itself, heal itself, and they can be declared AIDS free. You know, I don't know what value that is really specifically. I don't think that our vindication in the health world or the conspiracy world, I don't think that we're going to be vindicated by the mainstream, and I don't think that we need it. I think that there's a big enough and growing underground of people who understand that the mainstream fake news apparatus isn't the thing that we're going to take as gospel, and that we need to take control of our health. And like, whenever the FDA or whatever decides to stand up and say, yeah guys, actually it turns out you can support and promote your body's natural ability to heal itself with nutrition, you know, by that point it's going to be too late. We already know all this, right? They're going to be way behind anyways.
Well, it's up to us anyways. It's not up to the FDA. I don't know what difference it makes to be vindicated. And I know nobody commented on that. I'm just kind of going on a rant, but it is what it is. Someone, Whiskey, Beer, and Conspiracies said that AIDS talk on our podcast blew my mind. Guys, check that out if you haven't. I really like doing podcasts. You know, it's a whole different format from all this other stuff that we're used to doing all the time. I like the audio format. I like going into depth on some things, and it's part of what actually inspired me to go live here even tonight. You know, there's a much different impact you get when you're able to hear long form audio, and if you watch it, I think it's even better. Someone says that AIDS story sounds like this corona pandemic. It does sound like this corona pandemic, by the way, and that's what we talked about on that podcast as well, that probably a big part of this whole thing, not probably, it very likely seems to be, is false positive tests. False positives are rampant in HIV tests. They're rampant in mammograms and breast cancer diagnosis. They're rampant in type 1 diabetes diagnosis, and I guarantee they're rampant in coronavirus. We don't even know if they're measuring coronavirus. Like, it literally could just be a test promoting that just produces false positives, and it could be a freaking random for all we actually know. I'm not gonna pose as an expert on the Corona-19 test, but COVID-19, Corona-19. I'm not gonna pose as an expert on the test, but I reckon it's BS. I reckon it's getting way more false positives, and to me, it's not worth it to have a test that has false positives. And this whole thing, it's much more than a virus. This is a political thing that's happening. This is an economic thing that's happening. You know, there's many factions involved in it, and very little of it, in my opinion, has anything to do with public safety or health. The only way to tell you if corona is taking the test, then people start dying in the hospitals. Very sketchy. It's a good point, right? And it's been said by us in other contexts. Going into a hospital is one of the worst things that you can do when you're sick, right? Putting yourself at all types of new risk. They're very unlikely to be able to help you. And it's obvious by numbers that, like, if they're true, 80% of the people in New York that are on respirators are dying. That's a far higher mortality rate than the virus itself, i.e. the respirators are killing people. Right? And that's bad medical treatment. It's a doctor mistake, and it's essentially a murder, in my opinion, because that ignorance is criminally negligent, in my opinion, right? If they're killing people on respirators, and we have this data, and we do have these numbers, and the whole world's talking about this right now, it should stop. People should be put in jail for recommending respirators, truly. If there's going to be a jail for anything, it should be these. This is you know, this kills more people than anything else. It kills more people than crime, certainly, with doctor mistakes. Do you believe it's possible to catch a virus externally? I've been hesitant to comment on this because obviously it's floating around. It's a very famous video, and it's a logical argument. I don't know how useful it is for us to argue over the pedantics of how you catch a virus. And I'm not going to stand behind the idea that viruses aren't real. It doesn't serve me right now to do that. I also don't believe that they're a major concern. And I've caught viruses before that have been very serious to me and my health. And, you know, if they were not a virus, I do not know what they were, right? And I've caught things from a mosquito, and I caught one from a flea before as well. And both of those things were probably the most serious illnesses that I ever had. Could have been bacterial, could have been something else. I do believe they were viral, right? I do believe they were viral, partially, and this parasitic world, I know that we don't fully understand, right? So, and that's something in the alternative community too. We also don't really understand it. And we also don't really understand how the herbal remedies or the natural medicines that work, we don't really know how they work against viruses and against bacteria. And we know how to explain because we can see it a little bit better. We can see the body reacting to things, so we know a little bit about cells and glutathione and this kind of stuff, but we don't really understand the magic of it at its bottom line. And I guess the end of this is that whatever viruses are, we do know that we need to strengthen our immune system to be able to respond to any threat, any parasitic threat, anything like that, any pathogen. And we also know you can catch some things while having everything that you need, and that's why we have natural medicines. I've been on my 90 and caught Zika virus, right? I wasn't on the 90 for, you know, as long as I am now. My immune system isn't what it is now, but I was on the 90, and we still all caught Zika virus. We did pretty good with it, you know, but we still caught it. Last December,
last December in Arizona. I caught something, knocked me out, fierce. It felt viral because it didn't feel bacterial. I don't think it was foodborne at all. It was nothing like that. It felt like a viral infection, and it really knocked me out. And it might have been the healthiest I've ever been at that point, right? So I don't know what's up with viruses, but I know that we got to strengthen our immune system, and we know that our body has this amazing ability to repel threats and to kill things, and we have some magic substances like colloidal silver and a whole world of herbal medicines that attack viruses or strengthen our body enough to attack viruses themselves. Someone says, do you like distilled water? And then the person right down said, distilled water is the best. And then the other person said, thank you. Well, my answer is a little bit different to that. You know, I know distilled water is going to be clean, and that's good. But we were talking earlier about structured water, and distilled water doesn't necessarily mean that it's structured correctly. You know, every product's a little bit different. Distilled water can be dead water, can be energetically dead. It can be nutritionally dead, meaning it's hungry to bond with other nutrients, and it can bond with your nutrients as well. Some people claim that that's a total misstatement. Seems to be the case, especially when we've removed it from certain people's protocols and they've healed, you know. And some people, by the way, you can fast on distilled water, and that could be your key. And then there could be other people who fast and get more inflammation, fast and get more irritation, fast and get more symptoms on their problems, more shakiness, more something, right? So everybody's a little bit different, and they're at a different state of decay. So distilled water may be a key for them, it may not. Shouldn't be used long term, in my opinion. If distilled water is your main source of getting water, I'd be in the habit of remineralizing it and attempting to structure it somehow by adding movement to it, or possibly in the vessel that you hold it in before you drink it. But I like reverse osmosis. You know, people that are more hardcore in the business, some of them say no, but our water guy in our company, you know, that makes the structured water, and the other energy companies, he stands by reverse osmosis. I've worked in a lab setting as well. We use reverse osmosis. We use different levels of reverse osmosis for different purposes, right? We even, in the lab, we do the dishes in reverse osmosis water. It's just not going to be as powerful as a filter as the one that we're going to be using for chemical reagents and stuff like that. But to me, reverse osmosis water is adequate. I may update my opinion on that as time goes on. Truthfully, I think it's probably likely the biggest thing that I will strengthen my opinion on would be water, and structured water that will be firmer in the future of not just clean water, but also structured water. And there will be some best filter out there, and one day I'm going to stand behind it. It may be Kangen, I don't know, right? It may be another company. I don't know. They may already exist, they may not exist, but I have my eyes definitely open. And I don't represent a water filter company right now. I actually tried to distribute for the company of the water filter that I use here, and it was actually just too much of a hassle to get hold of them and get started, so I didn't end up recommending them. And it's not useful for me to recommend to a lot of customers, you know, right now, because the service isn't great, and I kind of got mine and installed it myself, sort of thing, and it might not be your best option. But I will stand behind a filter one day. I'm looking forward to it, actually, and I want it to be demonstrated that it is the best on the market, and I'll be happy to represent it. Someone says, yes, they do. All bottled water is owned by Nestle, just labeled under an umbrella company like Evian. I don't know if that's true that all of them are owned by Nestle, but a lot of them are. All liquids from vegetable juices, big part of the Gerson therapy cancer protocol. I believe it. Vegetable juices are amazing. And by the way, a lot of people say fruit and vegetables. We say vegetables and fruit because they're both extremely important, and most of the benefit that you can find in fruits are going to be in vegetables as well. Like, you're going to be able to get all the phytonutrients and all the vitamins and, you know, amino acids and omegas that could be produced in a fruit, can be produced in a vegetable. When we produce fruits commercially, we produce them to have more flesh than they do skin, right? So a wild strawberry is a lot smaller than a farm-produced strawberry. Same with a banana or whatever you want, an apple, or you see a wild crab apple, it's half the size or less than a commercial apple. That means there's more sugar tissue than there is nutrient tissue. There's more nutrients when there's more skin to flesh ratio. That's why berries, especially even small berries, have a super high nutrient density, because a lot of those nutrients, most of those nutrients are found in the peel, the skin, right? So if you have a big giant strawberry that's just flesh, sugary flesh, it's definitely changing the nutrient ratio in the food. And we escape this through vegetables, because vegetables have all the benefit and none of the sugar, right? And sugar is not bad, fruits are not bad, right? But this is something you still overload. You still need to process it no matter where it comes from. Your body needs nutrients to process sugar no matter where the sugar comes from. We straight up had to spit the salt water out. That's good. It's talking about the salt flush earlier. It's good. Means you didn't need that much. It means that's not your key. Good. Keep using salt and you'll be good. Someone says, I have a problem with overeating. It's affecting me more because of the quarantine. So Dr. Wallach's favorite way to put this is that when you go into a farm and you see that the horses are chewing the stables, or they're chewing the feed box instead of the feed, or they're chewing on each other's horns, or they're eating dirt, or they're eating clay, or they're eating bones that are laying around, those animals have mineral deficiency. The farmer puts a salt block out with trace minerals and the behavior stops. There's a few key nutrients that are involved that will prevent you from being satisfied. If you don't have those minerals, you will continue to be hungry. Your body's asking you for nutrients when it's hungry. Us, we're dumb, we give it food. In order of importance, what the body's asking for, in actuality, is water, first and foremost. Your body wants water. If you're hungry, chances are you can knock a lot of that hunger out by drinking water first. Put a little bit of salt in it, it's gonna get even more of a benefit because water, salt, minerals, those are the things that your body's gonna be craving in order, and then food, and all the other stuff that comes in food, all the amino acids and the vitamins, it needs all this stuff, but it's gonna be craving water, salt, and minerals first. And knocking those things out can knock away a lot of your cravings. Most of us in this, that follow Dr. Wallach's protocols, we stopped eating less by default. We didn't try to intermittent fast. We just started eating less food. It was a consequence of getting more nutrients, was eating less food. And it wasn't conscious, right? We only eat once a day. We've eaten already, we ate hours ago. Oftentimes I kind of think about having a little snack, like some dates or some figs or something later, and I just never even get around to it, right? It's amazing how hunger can actually just kind of escape you. It doesn't mean you never need to eat, it means you need to eat a lot less. Sitting at home, okay, you're bored. It's gonna make you more aware of it, it's gonna make you more fidgety. You could also have psychological components, you know, just like somebody would have a trigger of anxiety and use a cigarette or a drug or a drink. Food's the exact same way psychologically, but fundamentally, if it's a real hunger coming from the inside for food, you're misinformed about what your body's asking you. It's asking you for water, salt, and minerals. So you can fill that in, get on the supplement program. And by the way, people think supplements are expensive, and they can be. We're not selling the cheapest ones on the block, that's for sure. But snacking is the most expensive thing in my opinion. Snacking and buying liquids. You know, I was able to save a ton of money when I was a kid just by not buying pops and sodas and Arizona iced teas and soft drinks, and just none of it, right? I just didn't buy it, saved myself a tremendous amount of money, probably saved my teeth, you know? So stop snacking, it's not helping the problem. Spend your money on some supplements, get them in your body. If you're hungry, every single time you're hungry, try and drink water with a bit of salt in it first. Drink the whole glass first. At the minimum, that will decrease the amount that you are able to eat when you do sit down and eat. And by the way, again, this can be a huge strategy for somebody just trying to lose weight in general. We do want them to have the 90 essential nutrients, but if you're 350 pounds, you need to start shredding weight off now, because what we're selling you is dosed on body weight. I don't want to sell you $350 in product. I want to get you 100, 200 pounds gone quick as possible. Right? And drinking more water and drinking salt can be just one of those keys. People eating too much will start drinking more, right? And do that consciously too. You want to snack? Do it drink. Do it liquid. Do it tea, you know? Do salt. And so yeah, so Beats by Shaban asked, is they on the 90 essential nutrients? And this person, Red Curtains, it doesn't know what the 90 essential nutrients is. So you need to DM us. And you could DM Shaban too, because he knows the deal. And you get on a program, you find one that fits you and get at least minimum doses into you and start taking care of that hunger. And this is not something that always immediately goes away. Sometimes it can take quite a while. For me, I don't think it happened for me right away that I just decreased my hunger. I was used to not eating very much food, but I was still hungry. It took a while. Some people doing the 30-day liver detox, that tends to be part of our standard starting protocol. That can tremendously affect your hunger, both because it forces you to do a fast at the start. And a lot of people never do a fast ever, so something that forces you to do a fast, just like if you were going to get a colonoscopy or something like that, they would get you to do this protocol first, and ours is very, very similar. To purge you out, and fasting would be included in that. You can't eat the day before or the day that you go in. that alone, fasting alone, can decrease hunger as well. It can be more difficult to do when you're sitting at home, for sure, obviously, right? But fasting will decrease your hunger, not every time, but it's very reliable as well. Remember, if your body's screaming at you for nutrients, it's going to remain hungry. You need to give the body those nutrients. Fasting's not necessarily going to get rid of that. Water is not necessarily going to get rid of that, but it should ease it. So should the salt. I'm overeating on anything in the fridge. Well, guys, also to remember, if you're eating carbs, a lot of carbs, if you're eating breads, if you're eating sugars, this creates more hunger too, right? The moment you eat sugar, you produce a hunger for more sugar. It's just like the cigarette gives you the craving for the next cigarette, right? What causes the craving? Eating the last thing did. So a lot of times eating a cookie, that's gonna cause your craving for the next 10 cookies, right? The next one's gonna cause a craving for the next one, gonna cause a craving for the next one. It's a drug. It acts like a drug if you're using snacks like that. And gluten will be extremely bad like that as well, right? This is also going to be fluctuating your blood sugar, you know. And someone who's snacking all the time like that, especially on sugary snacks, they're essentially like an alcoholic. They're running off the alcohol, they're running off the sugar, and they're on that blood sugar roller coaster that really is actually dependent on continuing to consume sugar. And that can be a crazy craving, and that needs to be cut out like a drug, because it is a drug. It needs to be gone, not weaned off. It needs to be gone, you know. And I don't think there's really full-blown withdrawal symptoms to sugar. I've been a bit dramatic on that in the past, but 2 weeks at least cutting the sugar out, that's going to get rid of the sugar craving. It's going to be the same with cigarettes, right? The cigarette's going to take you 3 days to get out of your system. The rest of it is psychological for you, understanding that it's not actually giving you something of benefit, right? Food, this is the addiction component of food. It's not actually giving you a benefit. You utilizing food or a cigarette or a drug is an attempted escape from an anxiety. Could be boredom, could be embarrassment, could be feeling like you're overworked, right? Feeling like it's releasing stress, meanwhile it's not. We know that, you know, these things don't necessarily relieve stress. Stress is psychological anyways, regardless of what these things are doing in the body. Guy says, I just want to eat all the time. Yes, the guy needs to get started. How do you remineralize water? You can remineralize water in a lot of different ways. It's interesting that the shungite shop asked that. I do believe you can do it with shungite. I think that's a good way to do it. We use a coconut husk filter, and it's not that we use that because it's the best. We use it because that's the way that our filter uses it, and that's a very cost-effective filter, and it's done me great. So it uses a coconut husk. You can use many other ways, and by the way, just salt. Using enough salt. You'll be able to taste if you're sensitive to salt, and you'll be able to get more sensitive. You'll be able to taste that distilled water or just pure reverse osmosis water is very flat tasting. So when you add a little bit of salt to it, it should actually give it more body, or any mineral. You should be able to taste the body in it. This kind of like flavor, but sort of not really. And you should become very sensitive to that. So there's a bunch of different ways to do that. That's the long and the short of it. Someone says, is it even necessary to take antibiotics? Guys, it's gonna kick me off here, and I'm gonna go back on. I'm gonna start the live up again, but this is the last question here. It is it even necessary to take antibiotics? In some cases, yes, because they're a lot more powerful than herbal remedies, and you could be super weak immune system. You could be, you know, you could have taken antibiotics for a long time and it weakened your immune system. You might actually need antibiotics to kill the one thing. So I'm not gonna dismiss antibiotics completely. I do think we need them. That one time I mentioned earlier where I caught something from a flea, antibiotics saved my life in that, right? And I said I think it was viral. Well, I'm not really completely sure how antibiotics always work on other things. Sometimes they do, and their MDs are bashed a lot from us for prescribing antibiotics for viral things. But in some cases there's a tremendous benefit from it. And in my case, the antibiotics definitely saved my life. So if it was a bacterial thing that came from the flea, then that's okay too. That explains it. If it was viral, it still had an effect. What's up, everybody who's joining? Go ahead and put any questions in here if you have any questions. The last question that we had was about antibiotics, if we need antibiotics or not. And I do think that we do need antibiotics for some things, that they're just not a major part of our arsenal, that they're far overused for certain, you know, especially a lot of people that go in and get chronically exposed to antibiotics. Guys, any of you guys joining, go ahead and put some questions in here. But kids who have been chronically exposed to antibiotics seem to have a heck of a lot of problems later in life, and yeah, it's a big problem. But from our point of view, if someone's coming in with chronic UTIs, urinary tract infections, or ear infections, or nose infections and nosebleeds, all these types of things that antibiotics can be given for, that candida, even stuff like that, we wouldn't. We would go in and fix the child's digestion or fix the adult's digestion, whatever it is, right? So having such a misfire early on and treating something with antibiotics can create a huge problem later. So this is why there's such bad press about antibiotics. Antibiotics themselves in some cases can be absolute miracles. And like I said, antibiotics have saved my life for sure. And back then I didn't know about the nutritional route. I didn't know what I would do holistically. But honestly, it was such an emergency situation and it happened so fast. I woke up with it, right? Like went to bed fine, woke up in trouble. That's the case that you need antibiotics. And even in my case, like say I had the herbal stuff on deck, it's gonna take, if not, it's gonna take a few days to get there. Honestly, I would probably, knowing what I know now, in that case, I would still, if I had the nutritional stuff on hand, I would take natural antibiotics, product called Killer Biotic that we have for that. I would take a herbal tincture if I have one, I would take colloidal silver if I have one, and I probably still would go get the antibiotic. In that case, in an emergency situation, you don't have time to wait for nutrition and all this stuff. You need to kill something really quick, you need to use antibiotics. This could also be with generalized infections. Remember, accidents are still gonna happen. You know, legs are still gonna get split open and stuff, and this is going to require antibiotics as part of a serious, you know, emergency situation. Guys, anybody who's joined here, go ahead and give me some questions here. I'm just picking up from the last question that was asked in the previous live, is just if we need antibiotics at all. And guys, the huge majority of drugs that are out there, we don't need. We don't need antidepressants, you know, we don't need anti-inflammatories, we don't need beta blockers, we don't need ACE inhibitors, we don't need, you know, anti-convulsant drugs, we definitely don't need anti-cancer drugs. But antibiotics are the only useful drug that we actually do have in some cases. Antibiotics are also the only drug that's designed to actually cure anything, right? It can only cure something if it kills the thing that causes it, therefore it is a cure. There is no other drug that can do that. Every other drug is designed to manage symptoms, and every other drug has a list of side effects that come with it, including death. Every pharmaceutical drug has death on the extended label, that little fold out package, even in the baby aspirin, it's going to say death on that label, you know. So we do want to be careful with absolutely every drug, and most of them by far aren't necessary at all to even exist. And then it's just not necessary to use antibiotics in a lot of the cases that they do. Someone asked, has you ever done a 48-hour fast? I believe the longest I did was 9 days, and within that 9 days I might have lost a little bit of track of things, but that was the longest extended fast that I did. And when I first started experimenting with fasting, it was after I had started the nutrition. And by the way, when I say experimenting with fasting, meaning I did it purposely, I've also been poor in life, you know, before finding the 90 essential nutrients, and I've not eaten just because I didn't have food, right? But doing a conscious fast was definitely one of the keys to maximizing my benefits. I got my healing experience. A lot of people don't know my story. I did post it. It's the very first video in the IGTV. If you go down, it's kind of why I'm doing this and a little bit about the diseases that I had in my cure. My cure was nutritional, but it took me until after that to really maximize it. I used fasting. I used a sort of like a detox, little mini detox program that we have using a product called Nightly Essence, which is essentially an enzyme product. It's meant to be taken at night, and for me, it caused a lot of stuff to come out basically, and you know, you can see when it's a detox effect rather than just a house cleaning effect, if that makes sense. So that wasn't that involved of a question, it's just whether I'd done a fast before. Someone is requesting they join the video, and I just don't think I'm gonna let anybody in right now. It's nothing personal or anything. We're just gonna handle some questions and then we'll pop off. Someone said, is jump rope good for circulation? I do believe that jump rope is good for circulation, better than some things like running, right? As you get that up and down whoosh, I think that's good for the circulation. Skipping rope can be a bit tough on the joints and stuff too. It's not going to be the #1 way to do it, but yeah, it's definitely worth doing, especially if you guys are sitting at home and stuff. Jumping rope can be an excellent exercise. It's not very high, like it's not extremely high impact. It also does not need to be super high intensity, you know, and you could do that nice and lightly and smoothly and get a wicked little exercise, both with with your circulation, your lymphatic circulation, but also with just your blood moving around, which is just the generalized benefit that you would get from exercise itself. Can we talk about orthorexia? Well, hey guys, you get to see me Google something. Things come up all the time that I've never heard of, right? Sometimes you do need to Google it. And there's a lot of weird diseases named after German scientists, you know, that look like other diseases, but they're so specific to name something. So it's not within my capacity to memorize every disease. So we're gonna look it up together and we're gonna see what we would do. Orthorexia. Orthorexia is an obsession with eating foods that one considers healthy. This is a medical condition in which the sufferer systematically avoids specific foods in the belief that they are harmful. So this is why I never heard of this, because the psychological disorders can be even more specified, and I do not memorize the diagnostic and statistical manual for psychological disorders. So an obsession with eating foods that one considers healthy. I'm not sure that this is a disease, but I definitely do know that it can be problematic for somebody to become too obsessed with their healing. And that, like, it sounds counterintuitive because we want you to be engaged in the healing process. A lot of that is having faith that your body can heal itself and that what you are doing is benefiting you. That is extremely important. And this is also partially known as the placebo effect. It's part of the placebo effect, that you do want to be, you know, believing that what you're doing is right. Even if you're doing nothing, if you believe that you're doing right, you're going to get some sort of a result for it, very likely. We know this because the placebo is so powerful. But if you're obsessed with eating or with supplementing or with medicines, it may be doing you more psychological damage, and it might not necessarily be benefiting your physical health as much as you think it is, right? And this is to say also that people can get a tremendous benefit from quite simple things unconsciously. We deal with a lot of people who don't care about the chemistry, you know, don't care. They just say, fine, whatever. I'll avoid this food, or I'll take diatomaceous earth, or I'll take this freaking supplement, and they get a result from it. And they're not overthinking it, right? So you get a lot of people on the other end of it that are so obsessed with it, I think it does them harm. I think it does them harm to their wallet, because they keep searching for new things, especially not given enough time for what you're doing to work, right? Remember, guys, we know from drug research, pharmaceutical research, that if you just do nothing, you just walk away, that placebo effect is going to be tremendously effective, meaning you're likely that the disease that you're studying will go away on its own if you just give it time, right? So overthinking it and thinking, oh, do I need another product? Do I need to do, what about this? What about, and then you keep doing research and you hear about maca root and you hear about moringa and you hear about turmeric and you're like, do I need to take 50 different herbs every day? And the reality is, it might benefit you to take all that stuff every day, but the psychological stress that you're causing yourself by obsessing over it is not the helpful thing. So again, guys, the healing process is mostly in the mind. As much as we talk about nutrition, this is mostly in the mind. And if there is something that's causing you anxiety, even if it's a good thing, that needs to be addressed psychologically, not necessarily nutritionally. Chances are the nutritional solution is quite simple. Chances are for that person to get their nutritional result, they really need to work on their mental. And this person also might not have nutrition. They might need to get the proper nutrition. It could just be that simple, right? They could be obsessing about finding the solution because they haven't found it yet. It could be that. But again, we've seen a lot of people, and I start just asking questions and fishing around when somebody's not getting the result that they're looking for, you know, with nutrition or with something. What could be an alternate cause? It could be a parasite, big one, right? It could be a parasite, could be loaded up heavy metal toxicity, you know, or other toxins in the body that shows up on hair analysis, and that's something that's not necessarily going to be addressed by what you eat or what you don't eat, right? It's that problem, like candida or whatever, one of the parasites. This is going to exist in you kind of no matter what you eat. You need to kill it. It needs to be an active process. And we're talking about fasting earlier. Even a serious long-term fast isn't always enough to kill a parasite in you. You need some active ingredient to get rid of it. So this orthorexia, and actually, no, it's funny that I had to look that up because this person asked me about this earlier, and this comes up in different forms. It's not usually given that name, but it definitely exists. There's definitely people who obsess over their health way too much, and it's not good for them. I worked in the gym for 4 years in the bodybuilding world, and I know that there was a lot of people there who were at the gym in great shape, obsessed with what they ate, obsessed with their health, ostensibly. And I know a lot of those people's relationships suffered, right? I know a lot of them got divorces, probably partially because of it. They work all day and they go to the gym after, and wife's probably saying, you know, or husband too, some women in this category too. What are you doing in the gym all the time? You come home after work, you never see me, da, 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 da. This stress of life is not worth the energy put towards being healthy, because the reality of it again is that health actually is not that complicated. We here on the lives and such, and even in the inbox, sometimes we get some really specific cases. Sometimes we really gotta fish around and find the key to healing. But generally, it's actually so simple. The average person takes a little bit of our advice and gets a major benefit, right? The original Dead Doctors Don't Lie recording of Dr. Wallach on audio cassette tape in the early 90s started off with an introduction saying, if you just took 10% of the information that you'll hear on this program, you will benefit your life tremendously. You will add years to your life. And it's true. It's true that the average person listens to us, adds salt, or goes gluten-free, or becomes a little bit more conscientious about some specific thing they heard us talking about, and they get a major benefit from it. So, having said that, if someone with this orthorexia, or obsession with being healthy or eating healthy, or obsession with avoiding the bad foods, that really just, you need to find your key, right? And you just might not have found it yet. It sounds I'm stopping myself, you can hear myself talk about it, because they're already obsessing about it because they need to find the key because they're not in good health. But you still need to actually find your key, you know, so it's hard to say exactly what to do. You need to lighten up about it just a little bit, I guess, part of that. Then taking more steps to getting the stuff that you need, rather than obsessing about the stuff that isn't making that big of an impact, right? And foods, for instance, once you go gluten-free and oil-free, you figure that out, that's pretty easy. You don't really need to obsess about that anymore. It becomes pretty easy to just avoid gluten. You know, it's common. You sit down in a restaurant, you ask, you know, is all this gluten-free? Is this soy sauce gluten-free? You got salt, you got natural salt. It becomes natural, you know, and you don't need to obsess about it. I remember obsessing about it quite a lot in the early days, and I don't think it helped me. And the funny thing is, I already achieved my healing. I already achieved my benefit from nutrition, and I started obsessing with it later, and I started nitpicking with it later, and I started, you know, identifying more and more specific little problems that I could address to maximize. And it definitely could have hindered my overall well-being during that time, although not as much as someone who would be concerned enough to give it a name, to give it a psychological name, you know. So I would just invite you to talk to us more about that. Whatever the key is in your healing, you can find it without so much psychological stress, and we're here to help you. Ongoing, continued, doesn't matter how long it takes. We'll find what you need, get you what you need. A lot of people, by the way, know what they need, and it just takes them a long time to get it, takes them a long time to do it, takes them a long time to buy it, takes them a long time to implement it fully, right? And like we said, some people take some of our advice and get a great benefit, but we don't know. We just don't know what part of it is going to benefit you the most. This is why we give all the information out, right? Bad foods, good stuff, medicinal information if you need it, right? You might need all of them. You might need one of them. We don't want to guess, right? So you should start on the food stuff initially. Probably already have the person who's fishing around, you know. There's going to be something specific that's going to benefit you tremendously. It could be a medicinal thing. It could be a parasitic thing. It could be killing a parasite that, boom, changes your life. I'm only going to do a few more of these guys, and then I'm going to move on here. Is L-lysine a necessary supplement? It's going to be in our basic supplements anyways. It's also going to be in your basic food. If our bodies are composed of 102 minerals, why do we need supplements? You need supplements because you're made of 102 minerals and all these other things. And these are also cofactors in all the reactions that are going on in your body. Some of the essential nutrients, the rare earth minerals, we have no actual earthly idea on how they really work, the full magic of how they really work, you know. But yeah, you're made of these things. You sweat them out, you lose them in sweat, you lose them in urine and feces, you know, you lose them by more activity, you lose them by more digestion. It's not in the food, you need to replenish. It is very simple, you know. You need to, every few years you need to retest
tile the roof. You know, you need to reshingle your roof. You need to paint the outside of your house. I mean, nothing maintains itself. Everything is decaying. You need to support the raw materials that your body needs to maintain and repair itself. This is the basic language that we're promoting here. Should I limit my 3-year-old and Tangy Tangerine? They've been having double amounts because they love it. You'll notice that product specifically, if you get somebody on that product and they just are obsessed with it, they're just super nutrient deficiency. Guarantee you, they won't continue that for that long. If they're doing 4 scoops a day, and by the way, it's not much danger of toxicity or anything if that's the root of the question, right? Am I giving too much to my 3-year-old? I don't think so. If they're lapping it up, if they're loving it, they're getting a benefit from it. Just like the salt, as you have more salt, it will become saltier. It will become less appealing to the point where it becomes offensive. Same thing's gonna happen with the nutrients actually. If you drink that product, its taste will change. If you have your first glass, 2 scoops in your first glass, it might taste really strong. Your second glass is gonna taste different. It's the same stuff. Your body, your tongue will react to it differently based on your nutritional structure right now. Very interesting actually. And when you've been out there working and you're dehydrated or something, and you pour that thing of Tangy Tangerine. This is not a product commercial, by the way. We started on this, I was started on this product because my friends were addicted to it, right? Obsessed with this freaking orange drink. And so if you're super dehydrated, it can taste like the best thing in the whole world. Going and you could fantasize about going and drinking some Tangy Tangerine, and then boom, it's got that buzz. The second one's probably not going to do that to you, right? Because you're now not that deficient. Your body's not giving that much of a response to it. It's been topped up. So if they're doing that for weeks and weeks and weeks, I would want to look for what they're really craving. They're probably really craving minerals. The Tangy Tangerine is not so much about minerals as it is about the whole overall package. There is minerals in it, but I would boost the minerals themselves, just the raw minerals. There's no upper limit on that. And the liquid plant-derived minerals, you can add that into anything else. You can even add that into the Tangy Tangerine, and that should decrease, by rights, it should decrease the amount that they're drinking. You don't have to worry about overdoing it. If they're wanting it, then their body wants it, and give it to them. Dr. Wallach calls it the seafood diet. Once you begin to become attuned to what your body's asking you for, your body will tell you what it wants. It will say, I'm craving water, I'm craving salt. It won't tell you in English, but you'll be able to listen to your body. And it'll tell you too in product form. If you teach it products, if you teach your body chips, right? If you address a fat and salt craving with chips, your body might tell you chips, right? But if you just give it salt and water, you might interfere with that process. But your body can tell you to drink Tangy Tangerine because you've taught it that that's the source of this group of nutrients that your body's going to crave for. It's produce a craving for that specific nutrient. Seafood diet. If you're craving something, eat that thing, as long as it's not a bad thing. Once you purge the bad things out and you break the addiction to the bad stuff, your body will not ask you for the bad things. It will ask you very specifically for certain things that you need. And I myself, I get this sharp a lot of times. I get it for eggs, I get it for red meat sometimes, and I get it for green vegetables sometimes. Just burning. Body says, give me green vegetables. Very specific. It will never tell you to eat an Oreo cookie once you get them out of your life, or chips or something like that. Someone's saying, please talk all things skin tags. I'm just gonna have to apologize because I'm only gonna mention skin tags briefly, and then I am gonna sign out because we've done a little bit of a double live here, and I appreciate all you joining me, but I'm gonna sign off. So skin tags, or sorry, they didn't even say skin tags, they just said skin, please. Okay, quickly. Skin needs nutrients to work properly. It needs all the 90 essential nutrients, but particularly it needs the omega-3, it needs zinc, and it needs a few other nutrients in there. Any one of those deficiencies, even vitamin A, vitamin E, can produce acne somewhere on the body. Dirty blood can produce acne, meaning undigested proteins getting into the blood somehow. Maybe not strong enough stomach acid, maybe the liver and bile duct system is underfunctioning, so not enough enzymes and bile are meeting the food that's been digested, broken down into stomach acid. It's supposed to go into the intestine and meet with bile and enzymes to move on to the next stage in digestion. And by the way, that converts the material from strongly acidic, it was strongly acidic in the stomach, goes in, it needs the bile to convert that to an alkaline environment for these enzyme reactions to happen. So that could be a problem. For whatever reason, undigested proteins getting into the blood, causing dirty blood. It's going to cause a circulation problem as well. This can show up as acne. Gluten intolerance itself can show up as acne, so you could eat gluten and you can get a skin reaction to it, or some other junk that your body's not reacting to, so that it's not meant to eat. It's an irritant, right? That's why we call it gluten intolerance. It's a sensitivity to something it's not supposed to be consuming. That can produce acne itself. But deficiencies themselves outright, the digestive problem can cause deficiencies. So all things skin, you need to take your nutrients, you need to avoid the bad foods. Lastly, you need to know that the ratio of omegas can probably be your biggest contributor, right? You can be on the 90 and you can be eating the way that we're telling you to eat, and you could be, by doing that, you're getting too much omega-6s, not enough omega-3. So what we do, and this is why we've designed some of our product packs to include extra omega-3, because we just find blanketly that when we boost the omega-3s, the EPA and DHA, then we get a skin result. I know me, as an O-negative blood type, I think blood type has a lot to do with it, but I don't know the complete ins and outs yet. I do hope to build that picture. I do think the O-negative blood type needs a tremendous amount of omega-3 and needs a tremendous amount of salt, and does also need the heme iron found in blood somehow, right? But I know that I get acne if I don't have enough vitamin D or I don't have enough omega-3. Doesn't matter what else I supplement with, it doesn't matter what I eat. If I get off of or run out of vitamin D and or omega-3, within about 2 weeks, my body's gonna start producing acne. It takes, at that point in time, if I reintroduce the omegas and the vitamin D, it's still gonna take about 2 weeks to really notice a difference. So I do think it's a process that you can't just boom, switch off, right? The body's producing acne, you need to reverse that process, and it's not a snap overnight thing. And as you're changing your diet too, by the way, even if you were eating junk food before, you could quit junk food. There's people that eat junk food and they don't have bad skin. Quit junk food, start eating healthy, start to develop skin problems. This is because of ratio problems. And I don't want to get into a full theory of why, because it can be so complicated. But the point is, boosting the omega-3s, boosting the D, boosting the zinc. These three are all very inexpensive nutrients. The omega-3 I would recommend getting from us. The D you don't have to, but I buy ours anyways, and it does me quite well. And the same thing with the zinc. Now zinc is actually, I'm gonna start to get in trouble for this, but I'm gonna start doing what Ben Fuchs has done for years. And Pharmacist Ben, we love him, but when we bring him to talk live, we used to have to take him aside and be like, Ben, people have to leave this talk thinking they need the 90 essential nutrients. They can't leave the talk just stoked about the benefits of vitamin C and B12 and zinc, right? You can get lost in Ben's specifics talking about specific individual nutrients. Meanwhile, we're talking about the 90 essential nutrients, and that incorporates them all. Anyways, if you take our standard 90 essential nutrients, it doesn't have enough zinc in it. Zinc is one of the things that needs to be boosted. Our zinc product, Zinc FX, still isn't enough. It's a great product, it tastes great, it's not very expensive, but it's still not enough. So if you do get some zinc picolinate, or another form of zinc, whatever you want, but zinc picolinate raw from a pharmacist, it can be very cheap, and you can boost that very, very cheaply. And in the health business, there's a lot of people who just get skin benefits just from boosting zinc alone, right? Not changing their diet or anything like that. Could be with omega as well, except of course omega is a lot harder to absorb, especially with gluten intolerance and this stuff. Too much carbs, not enough salt, all that kind of stuff. So follow all the recommendations for healthy skin. Boost the good fats if you need to. Boost the omegas if that's not enough. Should be on D anyways. You should be getting enough vitamin D anyways. That's a really critical nutrient that we don't get enough time to talk about. Could be your absolute key to healing. The vitamin D, if you're not getting it. We're up north still not that much sun. Gotta supplement with it. And again, the zinc and the selenium and some of the other things. It sounds complicated when you just start rattling off nutrients. We want you to take the 90 and you can boost those other ones, those other key nutrients as needed. And I think that's gonna be it. That's all I'm gonna say on skin for now. Probably rambled. By the way, if you wanna know more about skin, I recommend it sometimes, but everybody should watch Ben Fuchs's video series called The 7 Different Types of Acne. Very informative, so much detail that you can learn about the skin. because we make it sound too simple. I think we're guilty of making it sound too simple too often, and you don't need to know everything about skin, but it is nice to know that skin problems in different places in the body, they do mean different things. And if you can recognize it, you can target it. You can see what's hormonal acne, you can see what's digestive acne, right? And there's 7 different types. And if you YouTube it, Ben Fuchs, 7 types of acne, you can see it. So I appreciate all you guys for joining me. Got a ton of love, ton of respect for all of you. Need anything, hit me up on the personal account, hit me up on the DM on this account. There's a bunch of people in there that help. I'm in there as well. If it's for me personally, they'll leave it for me. You can always reach out to me personally. Otherwise, if it's something that's not a direct nutritional protocol, if you have any questions about anything nutritional, hit us up in the DM absolutely anytime. Any specific questions, anything like that. Even if it's questions about products from another company, or even if you don't buy products from it, doesn't matter. Come into the DM, let us help you sort this stuff out, do it properly, and together we'll make the world a better place. I believe that's the whole point of this. So hope all you enjoyed this. Hope you got some value. I'll put a recorded version up on YouTube, and you'll see this chopped up and inserted into the Instagram feed in little clip formats with titles and everything. We can talk there. See you next time, guys.